Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had time traveling Quirk part 2. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 3, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also share this video with your friends, and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story lightningstormtc from 𝐴𝐿3. So let's start the video. Izuku woke up in a hospital bed, his shoulder burning. Wah? He rubbed his head, trying to remember what happened. His facial expression changed as the memories started flooding in. Midoriya-san. Ida's voice made Midoriya jump. He turned his head to see Shoto and Ida looking at him with concern. Are you all right? Yeah, Izuku said, shaking his head to clear his thoughts. I was just thinking about the fight. Yeah, Shoto said, nodding thoughtfully. I couldn't help but feel that something was off. I felt like he was holding back, Izuku said. I think he could have killed us at any time. We're still students, and 𝐷𝐸 has killed a large amount of heroes. It's not like 3 students are stronger than the pro hero teams who were taken down by him. But, Ida started in disbelief. The 3 of them had given it their all, and he didn't want to believe that 𝐷𝐸 could be any stronger. But after some reconsidering, he faced the facts. I guess you're right. Thank you, Izuku said to the 2, catching their attention. I wouldn't be here if you 2 didn't show up in time. It's only natural, Shoto said to the boy, a small smile on his face. You saved me. What kind of friend would I be if I didn't come to your aid? Speaking of which, Izuku said. What kind of message were you talking about? I never sent anything out. Really? Shoto asked, taking out his phone, showing Izuku his text history. I got a text from you just sending your location. Weird, Izuku said. I would check, but I don't know where it is. Some old man said your phone was busted before we went in here, Ida said. He said his name was Gran Torino. Yeah, he's the one I'm interning with, Izuku said. Before they could say any more, Torino and Kiro walked in with a dog-human hybrid who was about as tall as Kiro. Hey, little man, Kiro said. You guys have a visitor. Hello, the man-dog said respectfully. My name is Tsuragami Kenji, and I am the chief of the police force. It's an honor to meet you, Izuku said, his eyes darting between the 3 adults. May I ask what is going on? Ever since quirks manifested, the police force refused the use of quirks in the force, Kenji started. As a result, pro heroes went up to take their place, but they have had a strict moral code. The reason young heroes are assigned to supervisors is because we cannot be sure if they can uphold said moral code. Even if it was the hero killer that you fought, what you 3 did was still breaking the law, and as such, you 3 and your guardians would be subject to legal repercussions. But that's, Shoto started, but was cut off when Kiro raised his hand. Even Kenji looked over, perplexed. You didn't let the old man finish, Shokun, Kiro said, smirking at the chief. I think we should before you go off on him. I swear, Kiro-san. After all these years, I still think that your quirk can read minds, Kenji huffed. Call it hero's intuition, Kiro shrugged. He is correct. I merely spoke as a member of the police force, Kenji said before bowing to the 3 students. But as a citizen of this city, I deeply thank you for keeping the peace. More people could have died if you did not step in. Everyone except Kiro stared at the chief of police, completely dumbfounded. Since there was not enough witnesses of the fight, I have proposed a cover-up, Kenji started, raising to his full height yet again. But due to recorded events, only Midoriya-san can take any credit for what happened. Is that okay with you 2? Shoto and Ida nodded silently. Thank you, Kenji said again. This story is to prevent you 2 from getting in trouble. If that is all, I'll be taking my leave. As the 3 adults left, Kiro turned around to look at his 2 interns. Wheels up in 5. Kiddos, he said. After all, you 2 aren't my only interns. All for One gritted his teeth as he saw the recordings. Why was Shimura Nana alive? And even more importantly, why did she not look any older than she did in her final fight? This was a huge problem, but All for One knew that he needed to bide his time. He clicked a button, and the screen shifted to the base of the League of Villains. Sensei, Shigaraki said respectfully as he and Kurogiri bowed at the screen. What can we do for you? Some unforeseen issues have come up, All for One said with venom in his voice. You're going to need recruit more people. The followers of 𝐷𝐸 are now anyone's game now that 𝐷𝐸 is gone. Go make contact with them and recruit them to our cause. Kiro, Ida, and Shoto walked in Kiro's firm to see the interns battling it out with the squad. Mustard was working with the interns as usual, and Toga and Ochako had already gone back to Gunhead to finish their internship. "Alright, you two should return to your team," Kiro said. "I have to go back to individually helping all of you." Kodai Yui nervously walked into the training room, not knowing what to expect. Kiro had just returned from Hasu with Ida and Shoto, and instantly called her in. Was she in trouble? Did she do something wrong? She saw Kiro sitting on the grass cross-legged, looking at the sky through the windows. "Come sit with me, Kodai-san," Kiro said, not even looking back. Yui paced over and sat next to the man without saying a word. "How are the internships?" Kiro asked her, not turning his head from the sky. He looked to be deep in thought as he closed his eyes momentarily. Yui responded, turning her head to look at what Kiro was seeing. "Yeah, the tomatoes are really good," Kiro said, turning to her. She looked at him, slightly shocked. He knew what she was intending to say, which has never happened before. He put his hand in his pocket and took one out. "Want one?" Yui replied happily, plucking the tomato from his hand and taking a bite. "I'm glad you enjoy," Kiro said. "You've been doing well, Kodai-san." Yui nodded in thanks before tilting her head, putting a finger on her cheek. "Well, I knew someone just like you when I was younger," Kiro said, his eyes filled with longing for his fallen comrades. She was really sweet, but had a hard time talking. As such, my friends, and I took the time to decipher what she was saying, even if it took years before she started talking properly. Yui said, nodding twice, despite not grasping the situation. "Anyways, I wanted to give you something," Kiro said, grabbing a backpack that was sitting next to him. "With the help of Mr. Compress and the company that makes my gadgets, we were able to create a backpack that is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. I know your quirk has to do with size, so I thought if you have something to store things in, it would make life a lot easier." Yui replied, her hands waving frantically. Kiro smiled as he handed her the bag. "Nonsense," Kiro said. "We created this bag so you can have it. I don't want it to be used any other way," Yui said, a small smile forming on her lips as she took the bag. "Of course," Kiro replied, the longing in his eyes returning. "I would do anything for my students." Shinso walked in, his hand gripping the capture weapon that Kiro had given him when the internship had started. "I see you've taken a liking to it," Kiro said, smiling. "I'm still trying to convince 𝐲𝐸 to take you for your next internship. But that's besides the point. You're improving a lot." "Thank you," Shinso said honestly as he let go of the scarf. "It's only because of you." "Don't give me too much credit," Kiro replied, waving his hand dismissively. "The only thing that's gotten you so far in such a short amount of time is your tenacity." Shinso nodded, seeing the smirk on Kiro's face. He tensed up as Kiro got into a fighting position, realizing what was going to happen, but smirked. Kiro was dumb to think that Shinso was the same person he had met the week before. "Now," Kiro said, smiling, "shall we mark your progress?" Toru bounded into the training room, excited to finally have a turn with Kiro. "Kiro-san," she called to the man, who was staring into space. He almost jumped when he heard her voice. "Hagakure-chan," Kiro smiled at the bubbly girl. "Me, what are we going to do?" Toru asked excitedly. "Are you going to teach me karate? Are we going to learn some cool fighting moves?" "Even better," Kiro said. "I noticed that you try to sneak up on enemies with your invisibility, but that has some problems. You can still be heard, potentially giving away your location." Kiro could swear that Toru was putting her finger on her chin thoughtfully. "What can I do about that, though?" "Simple," Kiro said. "I'm going to teach you how to become a ninja." "A ninja?" Toru squealed. "That's so cool. You didn't tell me you were a ninja, Kiro-san." "I'm not. I just had a good teacher," Kiro shrugged. There were no ninjas in the war, but Toru's future self was the next best thing. Shaking the thoughts out of his head, he smiled again at the girl, who was excitedly waving her arms up and down. "Anyways, shall we get started?" Momo walked into the training field to see Kiro, sitting on a table, reading over a book. The table was piled high with books and blueprints. "Kiro-san?" "Afternoon, Yaoyorozu-chan," Kiro said, looking up from his book. "Please, take a seat." Momo nodded and sat, looking at the books with confusion. "So what are we going to do today?" "Well, I've been thinking. You don't have to know the intricacies of something to create it, right?" Kiro asked the girl. When Momo nodded, he continued. "I was thinking that if you did learn some of them, that you can create modifiers for them. If you learn how to create small parts of things, you might be able to create hero gadgets from your quirk alone. Really? Momo asked, dumbfounded. She, nor her family, has never thought of anything like that. They have always strived to make things bigger instead of smaller. But here 𝐬𝐻 was, saying that the smaller details matter too. Sometimes you must think of the smaller things, rather than the bigger ones, 𝐬𝐻 said thoughtfully. Right now, you can create things that you have seen before. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you know how to make certain components, you can put them together when you're using your quirk, combining them to make all new hero gadgets. Momo nodded hesitantly as 𝐬𝐻 picked out a book from the stack, handing it to her. Now, let's get to studying, shall we? 𝐻𝐻𝐻 walked in tensely as he saw 𝐬𝐻 standing there with his hands in his pockets. You need to loosen up, 𝐬𝐻 notes. I'm not going to punch you or anything. I'll loosen up when I feel like it, 𝐻𝐻𝐻 replied harshly. Now what the fuck do you want? Your quirk can fuse things at the atomic level, right? 𝐬𝐻 asked. Yeah, what about it? 𝐻𝐻𝐻 responded sharply. The thing is, you're always touching air, 𝐬𝐻 said, startling the boy. The air is full of water vapor, oxygen, and nitrogen. Breathe out, and you produce carbon dioxide. Poke a hole in a balloon, and helium comes out. Your point? 𝐻𝐻𝐻 asked, annoyed. He came here to be a hero, not learn some stupid chemistry. I'm surprised you haven't seen it yet, 𝐬𝐻 said. Your quirk is exceptionally powerful. You can make water from combining oxygen and hydrogen in the air. Get some salt and some water. You can combine the chlorine to make pool water. But you can fuse the sodium with water to make it explode. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 stared at the man. He had never been one for academics, but 𝐬𝐻 was making a good point. 𝐬𝐻 smiled as he saw the expression of the boy before talking out a chemistry textbook. Now that you've realized, we can get started. Kaminari walked in, thankful to get a break from the villains. They have helped a lot, but they kept on knocking him out after he uses a large amount of electricity. Yo, 𝐬𝐻-san, Kaminari said as he saw the man. What are you going to teach me? 𝐬𝐻 smiled at the young man. Well, when you discharge a large amount of electricity, your brain fries. We need to fix that issue. How am I going to do that? Kaminari asked. I can't really control my electricity that well. That's the point, 𝐬𝐻 said, taking out what looked like miniature lightning rods. You're going to learn how to control your electricity. The students all stood in a line, exhausted. They have admittedly gotten a lot stronger ever since they have started. But the training was still hellish. They tried their best not to show it, though, because the villains would trash talk them if they showed signs of weakness. Well, today's the day, 𝐬𝐻 said, walking into the room with the squad. After tonight, our time together will be over. I have to say I'm proud of every single one of you. You kids aren't half bad, 𝗳𝗵𝗍 said. Keep this up, and you'll give guys like me a real problem. Nah, you're all trash, 𝗬𝗏 said, flashing them a thumbs up, causing the kids to flinch. You'll probably be able to beat me in a few years if you keep training. Stop contradicting yourself, 𝗬𝗏, Spinner growled. I'm glad that you all will grow up to be real heroes, not those damn fakes. Heh, I never thought this job would be fun, Magni said, shrugging. But you kids are all right. Quite the show indeed, Mr. Compress said. You will all become great showmen. You're all going to kick ass and take names back at UA, 𝐬𝐻 said proudly. Now take the rest of the day off. You deserve it. Stain sat in his personalized cell. Since he wasn't injured too badly, he was transferred to prison earlier than anticipated. But the police still had a cell made specifically for him. Akaguro-chizome, a gruff voice caused him to look up. He saw the dog man, Tsurugemi Kenji, looking at him through his cell. Your lawyer wants to have a word with you. Lawyer? Stain scoffed. Since when did I have a lawyer? Shut up and come with me, Kenji demanded. I don't know what he sees in you, but I pulled a lot of strings to make this happen, so you better comply. Intrigued, Stain stood up and followed the man to a room. Kenji opened the door for Stain to enter. As he did, his eyes widened in shock to see who this lawyer man was. Kuro Jisai sat at the table, his legs crossed and his arms relaxed behind his head. He was so shocked to see the hero, he barely heard the door close behind him. Ah, Akaguro-san, Kuro said with a smirk on his face, causing Stain to flinch. Kuro uncrossed his legs and leaned forward, placing his hands on the table. As much as I want to discuss pleasantries, I'm not here for that. I have a proposition for you. Deku-kun, /Izuni. Izuku turned his head 1 second too late to see two girls tackle him in a hug. Thanks to Nana's help, he wasn't completely flabbergasted. but his face still turned tomato red as he fully realized what was going in. "Gee guys," Izuku managed, squirming his way out and standing up. "How was Gunhead?" "He was great," Toga chirped, standing up with Ochako. "We learned so many cool things." "More importantly," Ochako asked, her face colored with concern. "Are you all right? I saw the video online with you and Stain. What happened?" "I was patrolling when I ran into him," Izuku answered honestly, knowing the next part wasn't as honest. Kuro-sensei was also out patrolling, so he managed to finish him off, which is why I wasn't injured that badly. "That's a relief," Ochako said. "But don't go off and worry me like that." "Oh okay," Izuku said, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. "Midoriya-san," Kirishima ran into the room. "Is it true that you went up against Stain? That's so manly. Was it scary?" "Yeah," Izuku answered. "When he made that speech, I was frozen in fear. I felt like sky was being weighed down on my shoulders, and if I moved a single inch, I would have been crushed." "That sounds really scary," Ochako said, still concerned. "I'm glad you're okay, though." As the students were chattering, the bell rang, marking the start of foundational hero studies. "Well," Izuku said with a smile, "let's head to class. Today, we will be doing a rescue training race," All Might said as the class stood in playing ground Gamma. "We will be doing it in 4 groups of 5. Starting with Midoriya, Tenya, Mina, Hanta, and Ojiro. Kuro-san and I will be your destination." As the group prepared, they started to talk about who would win. "I think Midoriya-san will win," Tsuyu said. "He won the festival, after all." "Tenya-san has improved a lot, though," Momo stated. "Kuro-san put us through hellish training, and we have all improved tremendously." "Really?" Ochako asked. "What did you guys go through?" "He somehow enlisted ex-villains to help us with our training." The class paled as Shoto stepped in to talk. "Ex-villains?" Shoto sighed. Kuro said to feel free to talk about their experiences. The squad was already off the charts, so no one could do anything about it, even if they wanted to. "An S class, and a class, 2 B classes, and a C class." "He made you fight an S class villain?" Sato asked. "That's crazy." "Twice-san was actually really nice," Toru said. "All of them were. They would point out what we did wrong and help us improve." "I wonder what kind of man Kuro is to get villains to help with his internships," Kirishima said. "Part of me wishes I chose to go with him." "Trust me," Kaminari said as Kuro's interns shuddered. "It's best if you didn't." "Start." Izuku went to 15% as soon as he heard the command. He and Ida rocketed off at top speed, at each other's tails. Izuku hopped from beam to beam with blinding speeds, while Ida used the strength of his engines to make huge leaps. As soon as All Might was in distance, Izuku diverted more power into his legs and jumped, causing him to wince. Nana said that he could channel a bit more power than he was capable of as a last resort, as it wouldn't cause too much damage unless he went too far. Since he used only around 18% on his legs, it only caused his knees to bruise a little. He shot past Ida and towards the 2 pro heroes. Izuku paled as he realized he miscalculated. He was flying towards the 2 at a speed much faster than he anticipated. He closed his eyes, bracing for impact, but realized after a while that there wasn't much of an impact. When he opened his eyes, he saw Kuro looking down on him. "Good job, little man," he said, smiling. Izuku turned to All Might, who flashed a thumbs up. "Great job, young Midoriya. See me after school. We need to talk." Izuku nervously opened the door to see Kuro, All Might, and Nana sitting on a couch silently. Kuro looked over to look at Izuku, a sad smile on his face. "Sit down, little man," he gestured towards the couch on the other side of the coffee table. "We have something important to talk about." Izuku sat in the couch and apprehensively looked at the 3. "What did you want to talk about?" Izuku asked. "And why are Kuro-sensei and Nana-sensei here?" "We believe it's time to tell you the history of our quirk," All Might said, causing Izuku to tilt his head in confusion at All Might's language. "Long ago, there was an evil man named All-for-One. He had the power to forcibly steal and give quirks to people. He was the worst of the worst, but he had a brother. A brother with a strong sense of justice. Thinking that he was giving his brother a gift, All-for-One gave his brother a quirk that stockpiles power into physical energy. All-for-One's brother was once thought to be quirkless, but he wasn't. He had a seemingly useless quirk that passed on quirks, but now it meant something. That was the birth of One for All. Izuku quietly absorbed the information as All Might spoke. He understood it for the most part, but a couple questions were still nagging at him. I understand, but why are Nana-sensei and Kuro-sensei here? Shouldn't we be the only two with this quirk? You should be, Nana replied, causing Izuku's attention to divert to the woman. You are the 9th user of All for One. All Might is the 8th, and I am the 7th. Wait, Izuku massaged his temples. You're All Might's predecessor? Yeah, Naha replied. I don't know how I'm still alive. All for One should have killed me many years ago, but here I am. And what about you? Izuku turned to Kuro. Are you the 6th? No, nothing like that. Kuro waved his hand dismissively. I was All for One's attempt in recreating the quirk. Since One for All was so powerful, All for One tried to create something similar, but stronger to combat it. That thing being me. But unfortunately for him, he didn't prepare for the possibility of me being more like his brother rather than himself. Izuku nodded knowingly. It made sense, considering that Kuro had once talked about how Eri was being experimented on. It would make sense that Kuro wanted to adopt her, as he had suffered a similar fate sometime in the past. Anyways, what we needed to tell you is that All for One has returned, All Might said, causing Izuku to pale. He is the one behind the League of Villains. We suspect he has gained a quirk that stopped him from aging. We know that it is our destiny to keep fighting. One for All must defeat All for One. That is why we must ask you. I know it is a lot, young Midoriya, but we must ask you to join in this fight. Izuku's eyes flashed with determination. I'll do it, he said without thinking. As long as you three are here, we will defeat him. He won't stand a chance. Class 1A and 1B will be going to a forest lodge over the summer, 𝐲𝐴 said, much to the excitement of the class. But those who fail will be stuck in remedial school. So it would be best if you prepared. The class had mixed emotions to that, chattering loudly. That being said, 𝐲𝐴 said sternly, causing the class to fall silent. All Might is taking an extended leave for personal reasons. Kuro-san has graciously offered to substitute foundational hero studies for the time being, so be on your best behavior. With that, 𝐲𝐴 walked out of the room as Kuro walked in. Sup kiddies, he said, waving nonchalantly. Now as much as I want to drone on for a couple hours about the values of being a hero like the course material states, we have an exam to prepare for, and I'm sure none of you want to go to remedial school, am I right? Kuro smiled as the class nodded in unison. Even Toga did, much to Kuro's surprise. Come with me to the training field, he said. We have a lot to do. When they got to the training field, Kuro stopped and turned around. None of you are supposed to know anything about the exam, but I'm a chill dude, so I'll give you a hint. Kuro smiled at the kids' excitement. It's going to involve teamwork, so starting today, you will be sparring in pairs, learning how to adapt to each other's strengths and shortcomings. The kids looked at each other and Kuro smirked. Now, kiddies, let's have some fun. Shigaraki walked into the bar with his two newest recruits, Muscular and Moonfish. Apparently most of the followers of 𝐡𝐴 have been out of sight for the past few weeks, and even Jiren wasn't able to find them. Shigaraki wasn't too happy about that, but it was fine. Muscular and Moonfish were both very strong villains. Shigaraki walked to the screen, which had All for One on it. I have returned, sensei, he said, bowing. Jiren reported that most of the followers of 𝐡𝐴 have been missing for the past few weeks. These were the only two that agreed to join us. That seems to be a problem, All for One said. But no matter. The Nomas are coming along well enough. By the time we head out again, we will have more than enough to compensate for our losses. Hi, sensei, Shigaraki said calmly. Ever since Kuro had started butting heads with the League, All for One has started to accelerate the research and production of Nomas, trying to make one that would be strong enough to take on Kuro. That is all. Very well, my pupil, All for One said before cutting the transmission, turning off the TV. Papa, Eri called over. It was a Saturday morning, and Eri woke up to see Kuro getting ready to leave with his hero costume on. Where are you going? Kuro smiled and patted his daughter on the head. I'm just going on patrol, Eri. I'll be back soon. Gigantomachia was walking around the forest, deep in thought. All for One has told him to stand by until his successor took over. The giant had no idea who his leader's successor, what or how strong he was. But he knew that he was loyal only to All for One. Whatever successor All for One had would have to prove himself. Suddenly, he felt 2 taps on his shoulder. Gigantomachia turned, noting to himself that it was weird how someone managed to reach such a height without noticing. He turned to see Black Lightning, the number 2 hero standing on his shoulder, waving sheepishly. Before he could react, though, Q-Ro's waving hand clenched into a fist, and he punched the giant, sending him crashing to the ground. "Oh, that was satisfying," Q-Ro said, landing on 𝐍𝐭 chest. As the giant attempted to get up, Q-Ro stomped his foot on his chest with enough force to cause the giant to crash back to the floor, causing him to spit out blood. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." "What do you want?" 𝐍𝐭 said, struggling to get up. Q-Ro was walking closer to his head, stomping the giant back down with every step. "Oh, me?" Q-Ro said, a shield forming on his right arm. He channeled all of his power to his right arm, causing it to crackle with black electricity. "I'm just here to take out the trash." Q-Ro walked away from a beheaded 𝐍𝐭, dismissing his shield. He looked at his arm, which had been completely shattered, not unlike the times when he first manifested his quirk. "Huh," he said to himself as he shook his arm a bit. "I think that's the first time for that to happen to me since my final fight with Shigaraki. No matter, I'll deal with things as they come." He jumped off, heading to the hospital. It sucks, but for the first time in years, he decided to give Recovery Girl a visit. "Use me." The voice rang through Q-Ro's head as he killed 𝐍𝐭. He shook his head, trying to shake off the voice. "Use my power." "No," Q-Ro whispered softly to himself. "Use me," the voice repeated. It continued to repeat it, steadily increasing in volume until it was practically shouting. Q-Ro shrugged. This wasn't an uncommon occurrence ever since Q-Ro arrived in this timeline. "Can it, old man?" Q-Ro said to himself as he landed in front of the hospital. Ignoring the voice was annoying, but it's not like he could do anything about it. "What happened?" Nana asked. Eri didn't seem to notice, but the troubled expression and the small bit of blood on Q-Ro's face didn't escape the veteran hero. Q-Ro sighed. "Let's just say the bodyguard of 𝐴ll-For-One's blood actually runs red." Q-Ro knew he said more than he should have, but he wasn't thinking straight. The voice was still going off in his head, even after the long scolding he got from Recovery Girl, and for the most part, his filter was off. "You fought 𝐍𝐭?" Nana shouted, staring towards the man. "What the hell were you thinking?" "Nana, please." Q-Ro gave the woman a tired smile, causing her stern gaze to falter. "You're going to scare Eri." "Yes, I fought him, and I need a nap. We can talk more when I wake up." Nana tried to think of something to say, but Q-Ro closed the door behind him. "Mama." Eri tugged on Nana's sleeve. Nana had taken on more of a motherly role for Eri, taking care of her when Q-Ro was off doing God knows what. She didn't expect it the first time Eri had called her that, but she was slowly starting to accept the role. "Did Papa do something bad?" "No, young one." Nana put on a smile, despite the worry she had for her benefactor. She crouched down and patted Eri's head. "He just did something dangerous. But that's just what heroes do." When Q-Ro opened his eyes, he was back in the war. Both of his arms were busted, and he was standing in front of a beaten and bloodied Shigaraki. "It's over, Shigaraki," the words came out of Q-Ro's mouth. He realized that he was reliving the events in his dream. "Not yet," Shigaraki said before dashing, grabbing Q-Ro's face with his hand. Q-Ro screamed. The fact that this was a dream didn't affect the huge amount of pain that coursed through Q-Ro's body at that moment. Q-Ro saw Shigaraki's sick smile as he blacked out. "Welcome back, Izuku." Q-Ro whirled around as he heard the voice. Standing before him was 𝐴ll-For-One, the twisted grin plastered on his face. "So nice to see you again." "Oh, it's just you." Q-Ro looked around at the ceaseless void that surrounded him. "You really need to do some redecorating. This place hasn't changed at all since I last saw you." "We're in your mind," 𝐴ll-For-One stated, causing Q-Ro to scoff. "Maybe if you used a bit of my power, then you can reshape this plane to be more to your liking." "You wish," Q-Ro scoffed. "Shigaraki might have been you little bitch, but I'm not like him." "You're awfully pleasant," 𝐴ll-For-One said. "Finally done trying to punch me in your own head?" "I've mellowed out since you last dragged in here," Q-Ro said. "Inko's cookies does wonders." "That they do," 𝐴ll-For-One said, nodding thoughtfully. He then looked at Q-Ro, who was staring at the ground, seemingly deep in thought. "What is it? It looks like you have something to say." "I'm going to save you," Q-Ro declared, causing 𝐴ll-For-One's smile to falter. "I've done a lot of thinking. We want the same thing, a better world. The only difference between us is that I don't want to cleanse the world in fire. We can work together. Create a better world. Save everyone." "You're an idiot," Midoriya Izuku, One for All scoffed. Maybe I am, 𝐀𝐦 said, turning around. But I will save you. With that, 𝐀𝐦 started to walk away before vanishing from the plane. All for One scoffed as 𝐀𝐦 vanished. Save him. Preposterous. He's an interesting fellow, isn't he? All for One turned to see a blond man walking up, stopping next to the villain. You must be proud of him, brother, All for One sneered. But yes, he is interesting. 𝐀𝐦's eyes fluttered open to see Nana holding his hand, a worried expression on her face. That's quite forward of you, he teased her. Aren't we supposed to wait for marriage? What? No. Nana's hand tore away from 𝐀𝐦's as she looked away, her face red. It's just, you looked like you were having a bad dream. I'm kidding, 𝐀𝐦 said, sitting up from his bed. Thank you, though. You're welcome, Nana said, smiling. After a brief pause, Nana's smile vanished. Now that the pleasantries are out of the way, may I ask you what the hell you were thinking? Well, I was patrolling the— Don't start with that. Nana held her hand up. All Might told me that 𝐍𝐭 hasn't left the mountains 10 kilometers off away from 𝗬𝗏. Speaking of All Might, 𝐀𝐦 said, pausing. After a few seconds, his phone started to ring. 𝐀𝐦 picked it up and answered the call, putting it on speaker. 𝐀𝐦, All Might boomed. Great news. When we noticed that 𝐍𝐭 wasn't coming up on the camera, I decided to see if he made a move. But when I got there, he was dead. Nana's face paled. 𝐀𝐦, how did you? She trailed off. 𝐀𝐦 just winked at the woman. Are you implying? All Might started. Of course it was you. We need to talk in person. All Might, Nana, and 𝐀𝐦 sat in the support group room 𝐀𝐦 called it. So you killed 𝐍𝐭? Yep, 𝐀𝐦 said. With my own 2 hands. How? Nana asked. Even the best pro heroes of my generation can barely dent the giant. I dunno, 𝐀𝐦 shrugged. I just punched him really hard. One does not simply punch the head off of 𝐍𝐭, All Might said sternly. Have you tried? 𝐀𝐦 shot back. Yes, All Might said, as if remembering a particularly bad memory. Yes, I have. Before they can continue their conversation, 𝐀𝐦 heard a knock on the door. Excuse me, 𝐀𝐦 said as he stood up. He wasn't expecting anyone. Maybe it was 𝗧𝗵𝗲 delivering Ares' present. He opened the door to see a woman with blue skin and white hair. Hi, she chirped excitedly. Have you seen Himiko Toga? No, 𝐀𝐦 said sternly. She is out shopping with her friends. Of course, it was a complete lie. But she didn't have to know that. He started to think of ways to get everyone out of there. What a shame. You'll have to do, the woman said, smiling brightly. My name is Kazuki Chidos, and I am with the Shueisha Publishing Company. Can I trouble you for an interview? 𝐀𝐦 led curious to his living room. Make yourself at home, 𝐀𝐦 said. Would you like anything to drink? A water would be excellent, 𝐀𝐦 smiled, seemingly overjoyed. 𝐀𝐦 nodded and walked off. Instead of going to his kitchen, he decided to make a few stops. He opened the door to the support group room. When Nana and All Might turned to face him, he pointed to the window and mouthed the words out. Now. The two nodded as 𝐀𝐦 closed the door. He then went to his room and got his phone, scrolling to a contact named 𝐬𝐴. 𝐀𝐦, get everyone out of the complex out now. Everyone except the Midoriya's 𝐬𝐴. All right. Why not the Midoriya's? 𝐀𝐦, I don't think it would be wise for Deku to see you in an emergency situation, 𝐬𝐴. Whatever you say. 𝐀𝐦 slid his phone into his pocket before moving to the kitchen and getting a glass of water and a cherry soda before walking back to the living room. Sorry for the wait, he said, smiling. I had to use the restroom. No problem, 𝐀𝐦 said as the hero sat down, taking the water that 𝐀𝐦 had given her. Really? It's a privilege to be interviewing you in the first place. No one has ever interviewed you before, Black Lightning. Just call me 𝐀𝐦, 𝐀𝐦 said as he sat down. I thought that it may finally be time to tell the public about myself. So, some witnesses have claimed to see you working with villains, 𝐀𝐦 said, the giddy smile on her face as she got out her notepad never fading. What do you have to say about that? Well, they're not necessarily villains, 𝐀𝐦 replied. They work under my firm. They have all signed an agreement to stop acts of villainy and work under me. How did you manage that? 𝐀𝐦 asked. It's hard to believe that you just talked several villains out of their way of life. I did exactly that, 𝐀𝐦 said. Hiding the truth would just create unrest. A lot of villains aren't actually bad people. They're just misguided people who have been cast out by society. I just gave them a place to belong. That's a very interesting take, 𝐀𝐦 said, scribbling notes on her notepad. What do you believe about laws concerning the limiting of quirks? Oh, those? Kiro shrugged. He knew what she was trying to do. He has gotten enough intel from his own snooping and heard enough stories from ex-MLA members to know what she was getting at. They're complete bullshit if you ask me. I understand why the laws might be in place, but they're too limiting. I feel like it's a right for people to use their quirks. Curious smiled even wider. He was a perfect candidate to be a part of the Meta Liberation Army. She wouldn't approach him about it now, but she would eventually. But, Kiro said, causing Curious to lean forward, I believe that some laws should be put in place. Even though I agree with groups like the Meta Liberation Army on some points, I believe that these laws are put there for a reason. Sure, people shouldn't be arrested for using their quirks. But in a world where there are no rules binding anyone regarding their quirk, it would be complete anarchy. I've been trying to convince the Hero Association to lighten up on their laws, but nothing's been working so far. Curious scribbled on her notes. Okay, he may not be a perfect candidate for the army, but after some reconvincing on Trumpet's part, he would be a fine addition. May I ask about your connection with Himiko Toga? She asked, unable to help herself. The girl fascinated her, and she's been dying to interview her. I've been wanting to interview her myself for a while. She's a part of my villain support group, Kiro said. I host a support group for villains trying to turn over a new leaf. I would invite you to join, but maybe not as an interviewer. What do you mean by that? Curious asked. Never mind, Kiro said, waving his hand dismissively. I will talk to her about your desire to interview her, but the choice is hers. Thank you, Curious said, poorly hiding her delight. Of course, Kiro wasn't going to say a word about this to Toga. The woman handed Kiro her business card, smiling brightly. That is all I have. Thank you for letting me interview you. Kiro smiled dryly as he led the woman out. It was my pleasure. Before I go, Curious turned to the man. How may I contact you again? I would love to have another interview. Kiro's dry smile morphed into a slight smirk. Trust me, Kiro held his hand up to his face, making the Meta Liberation Army sign, but instead of using his index finger, he used his middle finger, expressing his feelings with such a gesture. There's no need. I'll contact you. Welcome back, everyone, Kiro chirped excitedly, Iri riding his shoulders as he opened the door, letting everyone in. 𝗬𝗲𝗍, Twice, Spinner, Mr. Compress, Magni, Toga, Mustard, and 𝐀𝐦 walked in. Take a seat. The 9 walked in and took their seats. Now, I'm sure you noticed that there are 2 empty seats, Kiro said, gesturing to the empty couch. I'm happy to announce that we have 2 new members. You seem overly excited about this, 𝗬𝗲𝗍 said, an annoyed expression on his face as 𝐀𝐦 put a tray of cookies on the couch. That can't be good. You'd be right, my dear friend, Kiro said as he placed Eri on his lap, grabbing a cookie. First off, we have Shimura Nana. Nana walked into the room and waved at everyone before taking a seat. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Kiro has said a lot of good things. Before anyone can speak up, Kiro cut them off. Our second member is someone you should all know by now, Kiro said as the door opened. The group's jaw dropped as Stain walked into the room, minus the weapons. I believe he needs no introduction. This was not my idea, Stain grumbled as he took his seat next to Nana. What? Spinner turned his head to his idol, then back at Kiro. How the hell did you do this? Trade secret blackmail, Kiro and Stain said at the same time, causing all heads to turn to Kiro. He's joking, Kiro said, giving Stain a stink eye. I think. Anyways, Nana said, desperately wanting to change the subject. Can we please get started? Sure, Kiro said. Who wants to talk about their time since our last meeting? Ooh, me, Iri chirped, raising her hand excitedly. I made a new friend. Oh, Kiro said, intrigued. What's he like? His name is Izumi-kun, Eri said happily. He saved me from the mean bullies by hitting them in the balls. That's nice, Eri, Kiro said, causing a couple snickers from the group. Who wants to go next? How about you, Stain? Fine, Stain grumbled. Kiro had gotten me out last week, and I haven't killed a hero since. I don't know about you, but that's progress. Progress indeed, Kiro nodded. Can I go next? Toga asked, looking giddy. Please? If no one else has an objection, Kiro said. The internships were awesome, Toga said, causing the rest to shift uncomfortably, especially Stain and Nana. I had so much fun with Oken. Are you two dating yet? 𝗬𝗲𝗍 asked. half mockingly, half jokingly. It sure looks like it. Nope, Toga replied, her cheeks not tinting more than they already were. I'm working on it, though. So Haim-san has a crush, 𝐷𝐸𝐻 teased. 𝗑𝐵𝐼 and I better make some preparations. It's not like that. Toga finally started blushing. I just wanted to have a playdate with 𝐴𝐭. Not a real date. Yeah, that's it. The group shared a chuckle. It's okay to like someone, 𝐴𝐭 said. It's a natural part of life. Yeah, we'll help you out, �TWICE said excitedly. I don't think �TWICE-san would give the best romantic advice, Magni noted. Shut up, woman, �TWICE yelled back. Anyways, Kiro said, looking at Mustard. How have you been? I've been well, Mustard said. Yua informed me that depending on how my final exam goes, they might move Shinso and I up to the hero course. That's excellent news, Kiro said. You and Haim-san could study together. And no, that's quite all right, Mustard said nervously. Aw, Toga whined, giving a pouty expression. Why not, Mustard-kun? It'll be fun. But, Mustard started before sighing, admitting defeat. Fine. Yay, Toga squealed, resisting the urge to give the shy boy a hug. �TWICE? Kiro asked. How are you doing? Really well, �TWICE piped up. My clones don't try to steal my identity anymore. I had a game of poker with a couple of them yesterday. They're really good company. And you didn't invite us, Spinner scoffed. Too afraid to lose all your money? No, �TWICE shouted at the lizard before looking down. Yes. Speaking of losing, how are you, Spinner? Kiro asked him. I heard you lost a bet with Magni. Ugh, Spinner said. Don't remind me. I hope you have fun on patrol, hero, Magni quipped. Yeah, Spinner waved his hand dismissively. Whatever you say. I guess I'll go next, Mr. Compress said. The carnival is going great. I recently reached out to a friend, and I'll be doing an act with Gentle Criminal on Saturday. That's wonderful, Kiro said. Maybe we should all come as a group outing. Count me out, Stain scoffed. Don't be like that, Stain, Kiro teased. It'll be fun. Stain just huffed and looked away. Nana? Kiro caught the woman's attention. How have you been doing? Oh, I'm doing really well, Nana said. I made 2 new friends while on patrol the other day. Their hero names are Ryukyu and Maruko. Oh, you met the rabbit lady? 𝗑𝐵𝐼 scoffed. She's pleasant. She really is, Nana said, smiling as if she didn't notice the sarcasm in 𝗑𝐵𝐼's voice. Maybe she didn't. We're going on a girls' night out on Sunday. Yeah, that's fun, Kiro said. Just try not to destroy the bar, okay? We'll try, Nana promised, giving Kiro a smile that totally meant, we're so going to destroy the bar Sunday night. Magni, I've heard you're a freelance contractor now, Kiro said. Yeah, Magni sighed. Most jobs have too many rules. I only work when I want to work. Fair enough, Kiro said. The bar's been fine, 𝗑𝐵𝐼 said. I was promoted to manager not long ago. How has that worked out for you? Kiro asked. Now I know why no one wants to be the manager, 𝗑𝐵𝐼 replied, shuddering. Don't worry, 𝐴𝐭 said, smiling. It gets better. Ah, 𝐴𝐭, Kiro said, getting the woman's attention. How have you been? You're our last member. I'm all right, 𝐴𝐭 said. I was a little worried about Izuku when Stain attacked, but he assured me that he was fine. I'm not going to apologize, by the way, Stain grumbled. He is a true hero, though. I respect him. Before 𝐴𝐭 could open her mouth, Spinner hastily cut in between the cookie goddess and the hero killer. What about you, Kiro? Anything interesting happened to you? Oh, nothing too interesting, Kiro looked at his fingernails. I just flipped off a lieutenant of the MLA fully knowing who she was and killed Gigantomachia. You what? Everyone except Nana, 𝐴𝐭, and Eri shouted. Do you have any idea how stupid that was? 𝗑𝐵𝐼 asked. And how did you know they were a lieutenant? There are no publicly known lieutenants or any other high-ranking members of the MLA. I have my ways, Kiro said, clapping his hands together. Now, who's ready for the outing? Kiro and the Vanguard Action Squad, now including Nana and Stain, dashed through the rooftops. Eri had insisted on coming to see all of her really cool uncles, much to Kiro's dismay. Kiro tried to protest, but Eri's ultra-powerful puppy eyes Quirk was too much for Kiro, so he had Nana babysit her, which she had no problem with. Again, Eri chirped as they stopped to examine the city. Soon enough, little one, Nana said, stroking the young girl's hair. She then turned to Kiro. Anything interesting? He looked at his phone and sifted through the news. You and Maruko aren't too far from here. Oh, sounds like fun, Nana said. I've been wanting to introduce Eri to Ryukyu-san. Of course you have, Kuro grumbled as he jumped off, the rest of the squad following him. Ruko-chan Tilda, Maruko said seductively, poking the dragon lady. What's wrong? Tilda, stop that. Ryukyu backed away before looking down at the streets. I just have a bad feeling. As if on cue, a large explosion went off about half a kilometer away from the two heroes. Of course you just had to say that, Maruko grumbled. Let's go. We can save the flirting for later. Maruko leapt from building to building as Ryukyu assumed her dragon form and flew towards the explosion. The two heroes were suddenly bombarded by grenades. Maruko gracefully dodged them, kicking them out of the air as to avoid collateral damage, while Ryukyu used her wings to cause the grenades to be repelled into the air. The two heroes dropped to the ground to find a small group of villains trying to make an escape with a bunch of money. Hey, villains, Maruko shouted, catching their attention. It'd be easier if you'd all just… Maruko was cut off by a red blur dashing and cutting the legs of all the villains. Maruko and Ryukyu paled as the hero killer Stain smiled maniacally at the two heroes, licking his blade. All of the villains then fell to the ground, immobilized and buried in money. Uncle Stain is so cool. A small girl's voice prevented the two from attacking. They looked over to see a small girl with white hair, red eyes, and a little horn looking at the scene in awe. Little one, Ryukyu said softly, returning to her human form. She always liked children and prioritized getting the child out of a dangerous situation, rather than the hero killer in front of her. Are you lost? Do you need help finding your parents? Nope. The girl shook her hair happily. Mama would get mad at me when she finds out I went with Uncle Stain. I told her Papa asked for her, and she went zoom. Uncle Stain? Ryukyu echoed confused. She was snapped out of her stupor when she saw a villain rapidly approaching, his hand outstretched towards the young girl. Maruko was occupied with the hero killer, and Ryukyu didn't have enough time to turn into her dragon form. She stepped in front of the little girl, arms outstretched and fully willing to be subject to whatever quirk the villain would subject her to. Suddenly, a yellow blur rocketed down from the sky, crashing down on the villain. When the dust cleared, Ryukyu was surprised to see her new friend Shimona Nana, with her boot on the villain's face, and an angry expression that Ryukyu had not seen on the woman's face until now. Keep your filthy hands off Eri. Nana, Maruko said, turning around. Thank God you're here. The hero killer has broken out of prison. Nana turned over to see her two new friends, and her smile brightened. Thank you for protecting Eri, Ryukyu-san. Kuro would have my head if anything happened to her, she said, picking up the girl. Don't worry about Stain. He won't kill anyone, I think. How can you be so certain? Maruko demanded, but was unable to get the woman's attention because she was too busy scolding the small girl to notice Maruko. We're dead, aren't we? Nah, you're fine. Another voice caused the two pro-heroes to turn, facing directly at Kuro. Stain's the newest member of my Vanguard action squad. Pretty badass, you think? What I think, Maruko said, hopping up to the man's height and hitting him on the head. Is that you're fucking crazy? First 𝗑𝗲𝐵, then twice, then fucking Stain. Just what kind of shit are you on to think that that's a good idea? Probably 𝐀𝐦 cookies, Nana replied. She looked at the little girl. Eri, would you say hi to my friends? Hi, Eri chirped. I've seen you on TV. You guys are so cool. She's adorable, Ryukyu said, smiling sweetly at the girl. Is she yours? Yes, no, Kuro and Nana said at the same time. What do you mean, yes? Nana demanded, looking at the number 2 hero. She's your kid. She does call you Mama, Kuro teased. Isn't that right, Eri? That's right, Eri chirped, looking up at Nana. Mama, can we do the floaty thing again? Right now, I want to do the floaty thing too, Nana grumbled, shooting Kuro a dirty look before looking at the two pro-heroes. So, I'll see you Sunday. Sure you bet, Ryukyu and Maruko said at the same time. Nana nodded appreciatively and flew off with a little girl in her hands. I'm never doing this again, Stain grumbled as he walked up to Kuro. Can I go now? Before that, Maruko shot a look at Kuro while cracking her knuckles. I believe we need to have a talk. Are you sure you don't want me to be a part of the finals? Kuro asked teasingly to Nezu. He was in Nezu's office, leaning back on the couch he was sitting on, munching on a bag on 𝐀𝐦's cookies. Kuro, you killed someone the Hero Association has been trying to incapacitate, much less kill for years, Nezu started, pinching the bridge of his nose. By punching him. Not even All Might could incapacitate him for long. Fair enough, Q sighed. I'll get you for this. You really think you can outsmart me? Nezu asked, smirking. Of course, Q said. Of course, he could ever outsmart the principal. But Q knew how to do something that Nezu did. He knew how to play dirty. What do you think we're going to do for the finals? Ochako asked. I don't know, Izuku answered honestly. Every time I ask Q, he laughs and wishes me good luck. That can't be good, Ochako admits as they enter the field. All I know is that we're fighting against robots, Kirishima said. That won't be too bad, Kaken scoffed. I'll kick their asses in an instant. Yeah, that can't be too hard, considering the entrance exam, Kaminari said. Especially since we're stronger now. I'm sure you all have knowledge of the exercise exam, Shouta said, catching the attention of the students. Yeah, we're fighting robots, Mina exclaimed. This is gonna be so much fun. Ha, well you lied, Kiro said. Have fun fighting the teachers. The students' faces fell into shock as Nezu popped up from Shouta's scarf, shooting a look at Kiro. I wanted to be the one to say it. That's what you get for not including me, Kiro said. I told you I would get you back. There was a collective sigh of relief from Kuro's interns. As you know, there have been a huge influx of villains, Nezu said, turning around to face the students. As such, we need to up our curriculum with training that simulates real-life battles. As such, you two will pair up to fight a teacher. So that's what Kuro meant by teamwork, Izuku muttered to himself. Luckily no adult was close enough to hear him. The pairings will be Kaminari and Mina against Nezu, Aoyama and Uraraka versus 13, Present Mike versus Kyoka and Koji, Ectoplasm versus Tsuyu and 𝐲𝐿, Midnight versus Zero and Toga, Snipe versus Shoji and Hagakure, Cementos versus Sato and Kirishima, Power Loader versus Tenya and Ejiro, and All Might versus Izuku and Katsuki, Kuro explained. Wheels up in 5, kiddies. I'll be here to help if you have any questions. How did you know about the pairings? Mina asked Kuro. Luckily, none of the pros except Kuro were on the bus the students were on, since Nezu reasoned that Kuro was more than enough protection, even if All for One himself came. Call it hero's intuition, Kuro said. That's bullshit, Izuku said, shocking some of the students with his language. You said the exact thing about Stain. You predicted the Stain attack? Kaminari exclaimed. Where were you during the fight then? The League of Villains tried to attack at the same time, Kuro replied. You know that thing you saw at Usj? I had to fight 2 of them. Oh, Kaminari said. So what do we do? Hagakure said, changing the subject. We're up against teachers. Don't worry, Kuro smiled at Pat Hagakure's head, despite the fact that he was unable to see it. Just remember your training. They won't expect all those badass combined attacks that you all came up with. Hell yeah they won't, Kirishima exclaimed, his fist in the air. We'll pass this exam, watch us. I'm sure you will, Kuro smiled softly as the bus stopped. It's time to go. I'll be rooting for you. Tsuyu and Tokiami stood surrounded by 4 of Ectoplasm's clones. None of the teachers are going to hold back, Ectoplasm said. He was slightly taken aback when he noticed no fear or distress in the students' eyes. Wouldn't have it any other way, Tokiami said, nodding. Tsuyu-san. Tsuyu nods and jumps up and flings her tongue at one of the light bulbs, shattering it. Tokiami and Dark Shadow stand back to back, holding off the 4 ectoplasms, Dark Shadow growing stronger with each light shattered. As soon as the last light was shattered, an ear-piercing roar could be heard. Let's do this, partner, Dark Shadow's distorted voice shouted. Tsuyu couldn't see anything, but she heard several crashes. After the crashing stopped, she took out a flashlight that she kept in her utility belt and shined it where she last saw Tokiami. As the light shined on the bird man, the shadow receded, revealing Tokiami with an unconscious and handicapped ectoplasm. Good job, Tsuyu-san, Tokiami nodded in thanks and appreciation. If you didn't take out the lights as quickly as you did, I would have been done for. You did most of the work, Kiro, Tsuyu replied. But you're welcome. All right, Shoto said, hiding the wrist-mounted flamethrower and ice beam that Momo created with her quirk in his sleeve. You know the plan? Yes, Todoroki-san, Momo said as she creates ice skates. All right, Shoto says as he freezes the floor under them, and the dash off. A few minutes in, they can see the exit. As Shoto starts to form the ice, his quirk vanishes. He and Momo jump, landing on the ground gracefully. Momo takes off her ice skates and runs while Shoto faces Shouta. You underestimate me, Shouta said, his eyes glowing red as he readies his capture weapon. I believe you have the wrong idea, 𝐲𝗏𝗧 says, assuming a fighting stance. You underestimate me. 𝐲𝗏 and 𝐲𝗏 dash at each other. 𝐲𝗏 throws a jab, activating the flamethrower. 𝐲𝗏 sidesteps and attempts to kick the student. But 𝐲𝗏 dodges and attempts to uppercut, shooting an ice beam at the same time. As 𝐲𝗏 jumps back, he notices the wrist-mounted weapon that 𝐲𝗏 wielded. That wasn't a registered hero gadget. That shouldn't be allowed on this test. Of course it isn't. 𝐲𝗏 assumed a fighting stance again. Yaoyorozu-san made it. 𝐲𝗏's eyes widened in shock. Somehow, Momo managed to make original hero gadgets instead of basic objects. What's even more perplexing is that 𝐲𝗏, a long-ranged fighter, was able to keep up with him in hand-to-hand combat. Just what kind of training did Kuro put them through? Before they could continue their fight, a notification was sent out, signifying that Momo had found the exit. Guess we pass, 𝐲𝗏 smirked. Guess you do, 𝐲𝗏 grumbled. Kuro and I will be having words. 𝐁𝐦 is sipping a cup of tea as he uses a wrecking ball to destroy buildings to block the path to the escape. He looks at the students, who are almost a kilometer away with a telescope. He sees Kaminari point a finger gun at 𝐁𝐦 as an orb of electricity charges up. 1 million volt railgun, Kaminari shouts as he directs all of the electricity towards the machine. It pierces a hole through the wrecking ball machine, sending 𝐁𝐦 flying. Suddenly, as 𝐁𝐦 is flying, he is sent barreling to the ground. 𝐁𝐦 tries to stand up, but is unable to. It's as if gravity multiplied on him 10 times. He looks at the weights, and there it was, in black print, plastered in the weights in all caps. Got you back. 𝐁𝐦 groaned inwardly as he realized what Kuro had did. He had tamped with only 𝐁𝐦's weights. He considered writing Kuro up or failing the 2 students, but he chuckled. Damn you, Kuro, he said with a smile on his face, deciding to give it a pass, just this once. I can't believe you managed to outsmart me. Recovery Girl was looking in shock as one pair after another passed with relative ease. How is this happening, she asked herself. They're bright kids, you know, Kuro said, smiling smugly. Well, I also told 𝐁𝐦 I would get him back. He should have just listened to me. You're saying that you had a hand in this, Kuro. Recovery Girl turned her head up to the tall man, shooting daggers at him. Hey, don't look at me, Kuro said, holding his hands up in surrender. I just decided to teach the class the importance of teamwork. Koji-san, I'm going to need you to control the ants underground, Gyro said as she uncovered her ears. Sound isn't effective there, so it would be the perfect chance to sneak up on him. Koda pauses for a second, momentarily terrified. He then flashes back to Kuro's training. Aka shoved Koda into a room full of non-lethal bugs until he got over it. Koda was terrified at first, but when he started talking to them, he realized that they're actually very nice and constructive, going as far as to try to comfort the boy when he showed signs of fear. All right, Koda signed to her as he looked to the ground and started to mutter something. Koda nodded to Gyro, and the two covered their ears as a loud wail of terror was heard, causing Gyro's ears to bleed. The two looked at each other and smiled. They had passed. Toga wasn't necessarily having a good time. Midnight had instantly managed to knock out Zero, and instead of staying stationary to bait her out, she was actively looking for her. Toga took a deep breath before the mist caught up to her. She knew where the exit was, but she had to take the long way around, considering that Midnight could be anywhere. Toga leaped through a couple rocks. She deduced that due to her high drug tolerance, due to drinking the blood of drug addicts, she should be able to take a couple more breaths than the average person could. But she didn't want to push her luck. Ara tilde Toga heard Lady Midnight's voice and the crack of a whip. She turned to see the lady walking towards her with a sly grin on her face, swaying her hips seductively. What do we have here? Tilda. Toga dashed to the side, making a break for it. The two lead in a fast-paced chase, Toga turning multiple times. After a while, Toga eventually got herself cornered. She looked around, looking for a way to escape. When she couldn't find one, she resisted the urge to sigh and turned around to face the teacher. What? Tilda Midnight asked, cracking her whip again, lust shining in her eyes. When I see people run like that, it just arouses me so much, Tilda. I couldn't help chasing someone so helpless, Tilda. I'm sorry, Kuro-nie, but I'll have to use them, Toga thought to herself, letting her old self take over. 2 knives slipped from her sleeves into her hands. Toga's serious expression turned into a maniacal grin, one that has seen much more sadism and pain than Lady Midnight could imagine. I want to play, Toga chirped, making sure not to inhale the mist. Midnight's smile faltered in intimidation as Toga pointed one of the knives at her. "Will you play Wimmy?" Oh no. Kuro paled as he realized that those weren't the toy knives that Kuro had placed in hero costume, but real, metal knives. "This is bad." "Why?" Recovery Girl asked, looking at Kuro. It was rare for him to have such an expression of horror. He must care for the kid if he let out such a rare expression at the realization Toga will be subject to Midnight's torture. "Is Himiko in trouble?" "No," Kuro whispered, causing Recovery Girl to shudder. She looked at the TV and realized what was going on. Toga's smile was psychotic and sadistic, much more than that of Midnight. Recovery Girl wondered how such a young girl could make such an expression. "Lady Midnight is report." 𝐬𝐸 was quite concerned when Curious didn't have her usual smile. "I made contact with Black Lightning," Curious replied. "What did he say?" 𝐬𝐸 asked. 𝐬𝐸 𝐍𝐸 was a wild card. The limits to his power are unknown, but he seems to have a high amount of charisma, having been seen working with Stain after his arrest. If Kuro had as much sway on the system as 𝐬𝐸 thought he did, then having him in the army would give them a large advantage. "For some reason, he knew about my affiliation with the army," Curious replied, causing 𝐬𝐸 to flinch. Despite that, he still accepted the interview. He stated that he wasn't against the Meta Liberation Army, but he believes that he can change the system from the inside. "Do you think we should mobilize against him?" 𝐬𝐸 asked. Of course, if war was inevitable, he would like to be the one to strike first. "I do not believe it is wise to become his enemy if we do not have to," Curious answered. "Our sources say that they have reason to believe that he was directly involved in the death of Gigantomachia." "What?" 𝐬𝐸 exclaimed. "Not even his father was capable of killing such a behemoth." "Is there any evidence?" "I will email you the files," Curious said. "Thank you, Curious." 𝐬𝐸 pinched the bridge of his nose. "That will be all." Curious did the Meta Liberation Army salute and left 𝐬𝐸's office. 𝐬𝐸 sighed and leaned back in his chair. He had a lot to think about. Midnight fell to her knees, cuts running along through her body. She wondered how such a young girl could be so strong, yet so sadistic. "Come on, Midnight-sensei," Toga said, licking the blood off her knife. "I want to play some more." Midnight wanted to respond, but she felt too weak. She collapsed on the ground and passed out. The last thing she saw was Toga approaching her cheerily, her arms swaying back and forth. Toga crouched by her teacher with full intent to strike when a communications device went off. "Haim-san," Kuro's voice gave Toga paused. "Haim-san, snap out of it." Toga slowly regained her sanity, dropping her knives. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was doing really well in rehab and was making a lot of progress, but now this happened. "It's okay, Haim-san," Kuro soothed through the comms. "Just put the handcuffs on her. I'll deal with the rest, okay?" Toga nodded and did as she was told. As soon as the light clicked green, Kuro jumped down, holding Recovery Girl. The elderly woman instantly went to tend to the teacher's wounds as Kuro went to Toga. I'm sorry," Toga choked. She remembered the times her and Midnight would tease Izuku together. She had been so kind to her, yet this is how she repaid her. "I'm so sorry." Kuro knelt down and gave the girl a hug, letting the girl bury herself in his shoulder. "It's okay, Haim-san," Kuro soothed. "Everything will be all right. I'm here now, so everything's okay." He felt Toga nod in his shoulder and Kuro forced a smile. Kuro hoped that he didn't have to reveal her secret just yet. Sato and Kirishima faced 𝐸𝐸 with determination in their eyes. They already had a plan set. They both dashed, their quirks activating. 𝐸𝐸 put up a concrete wall and Kirishima boosted Sato up in the air. Sato flew straight for the concrete hero as he put up a barrier to block the attack. Sato punched the barrier, destroying it. 𝐸𝐸 continued to put up barriers as Sato crushed them. Sato's quirk was about to run out when Kirishima dashed behind 𝐸𝐸 with the handcuffs in hand. Before the pro could turn to put up another barrier, Kirishima threw the handcuffs before being blocked off by a barrier. Sato caught the handcuffs and tackled the pro hero, while he was occupied with his teammate, handcuffing him. "Most impressive," 𝐸𝐸 said as the light clicked green, indicating that they passed. "You knew that I would outlast you, so you opted for a different method. Frontal assault is manly, but it doesn't always work," Kirishima said, smiling. "Sometimes, it's just as manly to use your head." Shoji and Hagakure have split up. While not going for a frontal assault, Shoji pretended to sneak towards the finish line, deliberately getting caught by the pro hero. Surrender now, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 said. You don't have a chance. Guess I have no choice, he said, pausing. After a few seconds, he slowly puts his hands up. Are you giving up? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 asked. Just stalling, Shoji says as an invisible force drags his hands downwards and clips handcuffs on him. How? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 asked. I didn't even hear you. I'm a ninja, 𝐜𝐻𝐬 chirped excitedly. Isn't that cool? Ida and Ojiro stood around 200 meters away from the gate. The only thing between them and passing is a pro hero and a bunch of pitfall traps. The two students nod to each other and Ojiro gets on Ida's back. Ida dashes towards the hero with his quirk. When he triggers a trap, he jumps up and spins, using a kick to launch his teammate. Power Loader tries to intercept the student from passing, but Ojiro manages to hit the pro hero square in the face with his tail as he soared off to the finish line. Aoyama stood on the second floor, jumping and shooting small, consecutive bursts at 13, who promptly sucks them into their black hole every time. It's futile, 13 said. You might as well stop while you're ahead. Nothing is futile when you're as dazzling as I, Aoyama said, literally sparkling. At that point, 13 turned around just in time to see Ochako dash up to her and launch a devastating combo. 13 fell to the ground, incapacitated. Uraraka-san, Aoyama approached Ochako as she put the handcuffs on 13. Do you love Himiko-san? What? Ochako almost dropped the handcuffs, her face tomato red. I have no idea what you're talking about. She's an annoying jerk. She even went to intern with me. If I didn't know any better, I would think she… Ochako trailed off, slowly realizing her situation. Shit. Ochako and Aoyama returned to the room to see Lady Midnight being wheeled out in a stretcher, her body ridden with cuts. Kiro-san, Ochako looks at the pro hero. Kiro was looking at an open door with guilt in his eyes. What happened? Is Lady Midnight okay? What about Zero and Himi-chan? Kiro looked at the young lady. Lady Midnight will be fine, he started. But I'm not sure if Haim-san will be. She's taking this really hard. Where is she? Ochako asked. She didn't know what was going on, but she reasoned that she would figure out later. Kiro jutted a thumb at the open door behind her. Please be careful, though, he said, almost pleadingly. She's having a really hard time right now. I don't want her to get any worse. Ochako nodded. She cautiously walked into the room to see Toga crying. Himi-chan, Ochako whispered softly. Toga looked up at the girl, her eyes red and puffy. You shouldn't get close to me, Toga choked. I'm a monster. Ochako walked up to her, despite Toga's warnings, and pulled the girl into a hug. Of course you're not a monster, Himi-chan, Ochako cooed. The one I love will never be a monster, no matter how much you think it's true. We'll get through this together. I promise. Normally, I would go straight off and fight by myself, Kaken said. But it's fucking All Might. Agreed, Izuku said. We can put aside our differences and pass this test. Remember the move we came up with together? Kaken nodded, and they both dashed. As they closed in on the finish line, All Might jumped down, crashing about 50 meters away from him. The kids didn't stop, though. Kaken jumped up and prepared to use the attack that he had in the sports festival. Howitzer, Kaken said as a tornado of smoke formed around him. Instead of going for All Might, though, Izuku jumped in front of him, and Kaken launched the attack at Izuku's feet, who with the combined force of pushing off Kaken with his quirk and the force of the explosion created a sonic boom as he launched for his mentor. Smash! Izuku roared as he used 20% of his power to punch All Might square in the face, causing him to fly back a few meters. Go, Kaken! The two dashed for the finish line, but All Might got up and intercepted them just meters away from the finish line. Izuku made a split-second decision. His left hand clenched in a fist, as his right hand was already bruised, and used 100% of his power to uppercut the pro hero, sending him flying. Kaken took advantage of the diversion Izuku created to dash past the finish line. All Might landed on his feet. I'm so proud of you too, young Midoriya, young Bakugo, All Might boomed. You were put together because you two didn't get along well. It's great that you two decided to team up so quickly. Izuku and Bakugo looked at each other before smirking. Well, Izuku started before the two looked at All Might, huge grins on their faces as they spoke in unison. You thought wrong. Congratulations. Nezu chirped as the whole class stood there as the teachers stood with Nezu. Lady Midnight was still with Recovery Girl, and Ochako was still helping Toga cope with what happened during Toga's exam. Only one person failed this year. We are so proud of you all. None of us foresaw that so many of you would be passing. As such, we have decided to give the one student who failed a passing grade." The students cheered. All of them would be going to the forest training camp, and the remedial classes were non-existent. It was a great day for a majority of Class 1A. Izuku was walking down the hallways of the mall alone. Everyone had split off to their own needs, and Ochako went off with Toga. Izuku was muttering to himself when a hooded man went up to him. "Hey, you're the kid from the sports festival," he exclaimed, causing Izuku to jump. "Can I have your autograph?" "Sure," Izuku said as the man handed him a pen and paper. Since he won the festival, he had gotten a lot of requests for this, so he was used to it by now. As he signed the paper, the man wrapped his arm around Izuku. "You're also the guy that fought Stain, right?" "I wouldn't really call it a fight," Izuku chuckled. "He completely wiped the floor with me." At that moment, Izuku felt 4 fingers latch on to his neck. He looked at the man who had a very creepy smile on his face. "I don't know why we met again," he said. "But it must be fate. My name is She." The man never got to finish introducing himself was cut off when a white glove collided with his face, sending him flying. "Shimura Tenko, that is not the right way to treat your friends. Shimura Tenko is dead. My name is Shigaraki Tamura, and this boy is not." The man forced himself up shouting, but cut himself off when he saw who punched him. "Grandma." "It's me, Tenko," Nana said, causing Izuku to look in confusion. How did Nana have a grandson of that age when she looked so young? "I've come to take you home." "Home?" Shigaraki scoffed. "My home is with All for One. He took me in when no one else would. Not even you were there, so as far as I'm concerned, you're not here now." "Tenko, I was," Nana started, looking genuinely hurt. "I don't want to hear it," Shigaraki scoffed and turned around. "I've overstayed my welcome. I'm leaving." Nana watched Shigaraki leave holding back tears. He was right. Even if she didn't have a choice in the matter, she was still not there for her grandson, which gave him every right to resent her. "Nana-chan," Rukyu ran over, Maruko not far behind. "Save me." "Come on, Ruko-chan." Maruko bounded after her friend, holding a swimsuit. "It would look absolutely ravishing on you." Nana forced a smile as she looked at her friends, although there was a bit of genuine feeling. Even if her grandson hated her, she would not have to deal with this burden alone. And for her, that was enough. "So why did you call us here?" Detective Tsukachi asked. Sitting in the support group room was All Might, Shimoda Nana, Detective Tsukachi, Nezu, and Kuro. "Nana," Kuro asked, "will you do the honors?" "Shigaraki Tamura attacked Midoriya Izuku earlier today," Nana replied. "I managed to stop him before anything could happen, but the fact still stands." "That is a problem," Tsukachi said. "The League of Villains have been making more and more actions, and if they attacked Midoriya, they will attack other students." "We'll switch the location of the training camp," Nezu said. "I already have an idea of where to go." "The squad will be coming with me," Kuro said. "The students will be safe." "What squad?" Tsukachi asked. Everybody in the room except Tsukachi knew about, or have personally met the squad. "Oh, you're with the police. I forgot," Kuro said. "Forget I said anything." "Is it illegal?" Tsukachi asked. "Who knows?" Kuro shrugged. "I'm a hero. I'm not supposed to do anything illegal." Tsukachi sighed. He wasn't lying, but he knew that what Kuro said was not the full truth. "Now for the matter of All for One," Kuro said. "I'd advise you to create a special force of heroes to face the League of Villains. Despite the small amount of known members, they are strong. It'd be best to take precautions." "Noted," Tsukachi said. "Nezu-san, I'll leave it to you." "All right," Kuro said, clapping his hands. With that, his meeting is adjourned. Due to recent villain activity, the location of the training camp will be changed, Shouta said. "The location will be revealed at the day of the camp, but rest assured, it will still be in the forest." The class chattered loudly, half worried, half excited. With that, the first semester has come to a close. Enjoy your summer when you can. "It's an honor to finally meet you, Black Lightning-san," Takage Setsuna said, catching Kuro's attention. It was the day of the training camp, and the students were waiting for the buses to arrive. "I would like to thank you for taking care of my classmates." "Ah, Takage-san," Kuro said, causing the girl to flinch. He forgot he wasn't supposed to know her name. "I remember you from the festival. I really wanted you as an intern, but I already had a lot, and I can only take so many." "Don't worry about it," Setsuna smiled. "I had a great time with my pro hero." "That's good to hear," 𝐬𝐻 said, smiling back. I look forward to working with you at the camp. Likewise, Setsuna said. As they talked, they heard a loud crash. Nito, I swear to God. Kendo was wielding one of the giant mallets that 𝐬𝐻 had given her, slamming it right next to the boy. Can you shut up? You're annoying. Kendo-san, Ibara cried in horror. Do not use the Lord's name in vain. Anyways, 𝐬𝐻 said. I'll be on the bus with the WhatIf kids. If you need anything from me, Kino has my number. We will be stopping in 1 hour intervals, 𝐲𝗏 said. But the warning fell on deaf ears. Shoto was asleep. Mina, Kaminari, Kirishima, and Shiro were loudly chattering. Kaken and Sato were arguing about video games. Hagakure and Momo were looking at their phones, exchanging fashion tips. Gyro was showing Ajiro the wonders of power metal. And Ochako and Toga were arguing over who should get the right to sit next to Izuku during the camp. Let them be, 𝐬𝐻 said, patting Eri's head as he noticed Xiaoda's annoyance. Since no one would be at home, 𝐬𝐻 had no choice but to take the child with him. They're gonna go through hell soon. Let them have their fun. Fine, Xiaoda grumbled as he zipped up his sleeping bag. An hour later, the bus stopped on a random highway. Why did we stop? Mina asked. If you listened you would know, 𝐬𝐻 said teasingly. Now come on kiddies, we're going to do a fun activity to stretch our legs. That's an interesting way to put it, Xiaoda muttered as the students filed out of the bus. Hey, they will be stretching their legs, 𝐬𝐻 shot back. As everyone got out, they noticed the other 2 buses weren't there. Where is everyone else? Kirishima asked. Suddenly, 2 cat girls popped up with a young boy. Izumi-kun. Eri hopped out of 𝐬𝐻's hands and ran over to her friend. I didn't know you'd be here. 𝐬𝐻-chan, the boy exclaimed. What are you doing here? Papa works at UA, Eri chirped, causing the boy's expression to darken. Isn't that cool? Before Kota could say anything, the 2 cat girls piped up. I didn't expect another kid to be here, the red one said. Anyways, you will be studying at a mountain range in our territory. If you don't reach it in 3 hours, you can say goodbye to your lunch. 𝐬𝐻 chuckled as he saw the students' shocked faces. Kaken opened his mouth to shout, but 𝐬𝐻 cut him off. You might want to start traveling instead of shouting, he quipped. Without another word, all the students jumped down and began their trip. It's an honor to finally meet you, Black Lightning, Pixie Bob chirped when they left. I would love to get to know you intimately, Tilda. Yeah, 𝐬𝐻 jutted his finger to the chattering children. Not in front of the kids. You two can call me Kira, by the way. It's just easier. Well, Kiro-san, Mandalay said, catching his attention. How long do you think it'll take? 𝐬𝐻 smirked. 5 hours. Lo and behold, 5 hours later, the beaten and battered kinds of class staggered their way towards the base. Kira, Mandalay, Pixie Bob, Eri, and Kota were waiting for them. Mandalay grumbled something and handed 𝐬𝐻 a 100,000 yen note. She stepped up to address the students. Good news is that you vastly exceeded our expectations. All of you used your quirks with creativity and tact, she said. It seems that you have all faced villains before. Not villains, Mina said, panting heavily. Kiro-san. Mandalay and Pixie Bob shot 𝐬𝐻 a look of genuine concern before turning back to the students. Excuse me? Ida asked, raising his hand. What's the bad news? You made me lose a bet, Mandalay said, an evil grin on her face. Is the kid one of yours? Izuku asked one of the pussycats during dinner. No, he's a nephew, Mandalay replied. Kota, can you say hello to the class? Hello? Izuku went to shake the boy's hand. I'm Midoriya Izu. He was cut off as Kota punched him in the balls and walked away. Izumi-kun, that's not nice. Eri whined at the boy, who grunted and continued watching. Wait for me. Izuku fell to his knees in pain as Eri ran off to chase her friend. How dare you do that to Midoriya-san, Ida yelled. Apologize to his manhood. I don't want to talk with people who want to be corny heroes, Kota said, not caring to look back. Go get your luggage, 𝐲𝗏 said. After that, you can take a bath and relax. Izuku carried an unconscious Kota to the medical bay. Thank you for looking after him, Mandalay said as Izuku laid on the bed. Izuku turned to see Mandalay, Pixie Bob, and 𝐬𝐻 walked into the medical bay. It's just my job as a hero, Izuku said. It seems that Kota doesn't really like them. In this world, some people don't really like heroes, Mandalay explained. If Kota was raised normally, he probably would be like a lot of you. A couple years ago, Kota's parents were brutally murdered by a villain while on the field. They sacrificed themselves to save a few civilians. They were hailed as true heroes, but 𝐀𝐦 was devastated. As such, he hates heroes because he thought they cared more about his job more than they cared about him. Izuku looked at the young boy. Such a young boy to go through something so traumatic. Kind of like Tamura, he muttered to himself. Exactly, Kuro said, putting a hand on the shoulder of his past self. Not everything's the same about heroes. We will be spending most of this camp developing your quirk, 𝐲𝐻 said. Kuro has started training some of your quirks, but you will all need to get much stronger to gain your provisional hero licenses. Kuro smirked. We'll skip the ball test for proof and whatever. Let's get started. Class 1B arrived to see Class 1A training. Kaken was using explosions in boiling water. Sato was working out while eating. Momo was also eating while creating weird gadgets. Ochako was holding up weights with her quirk, looking as if she was about to throw up. Kaminari was doing target practice with his railgun. And Shoto was exerting a high amount of each side of his quirk, trying to get each side to cancel out each other. One that particularly caught the kids' attention was Izuku, who was getting slapped around by Kuro, even though every time Izuku dashed, a small crater was left in his wake. How are you going to train all of these people? Tetsu asked. Kuro backhanded Izuku into the forest and walked over. Hey, King-san, Kuro said. I see 1B finally arrived. Yeah, Vlad King said as the wild pussycats walked up to join Kuro. Meet the wild pussycats, Kuro said. I'm Mandalay, my quirk is telepath. I'm Pixie Bob, my quirk is Earth Flow. I'm Tiger, my quirk is Pillabuddy. Well, that's at least what Kuro got out of their choreographed skit. He didn't care about things like that, but he missed their antics. An image of their sprawled bodies lying before Toga flashed through his head. And I have a little trick, Kuro said. I really didn't want to use this, but my students are more important than my pride. As Kuro said that, several illusion clones popped up. Due to some circumstances that are too graphic for kiddies, I have more than one quirk. I didn't want to reveal this, but if it's for the betterment of my students, I'm willing to give out my secrets. Everyone looked at Kuro, baffled. Oh yeah, he said. I also called my friends. On cue, the Vanguard Action Squad minus 𝐷𝐸 and plus Nana dropped down, standing behind Kuro. Some of you have already met them, but we have a couple new members, Kuro said. Don't freak out. The pussycats looked at Kuro in confusion as the hero killer 𝐷𝐸 dropped in. What the fuck? Pixie Bob shouted, creating an earth golem. Calm down, Kuro said, destroying the golem with a flick of his finger. 𝐷𝐸's with the squad. He's here to help you train. The students paled. 𝐷𝐸 was going to be their mentor. Mito finally stopped ranting about wanted to look at Kuro as if he was crazy. Kendo rolled her eyes and said something along the lines of course you did, and Ibara had her eyes closed, whispering a couple prayers. Oh, it's not that bad, Kuro waved his hand dismissively. Anyways, everyone will be going around and trying to teach you new techniques if we can. If I've already taught you something, I probably won't spend as much time with you. Everyone has to catch up. At that, Izuku dragged himself out of the forest and froze when he saw the hero killer. 𝐷𝐸. 𝐷𝐸 turned around to see someone he respected as a true hero. 𝐷𝐸's best attempt at a smile grew on his face, though it still looked like a devilish smirk. Deku, he said, steam escaping his mouth. It's so nice to see you again, Komori-chan. Kuro caught the shy girl's attention. He was looking at his forest training prank list to make it look like he was reading files on the students. Ah, yes. I remember what I wanted to do with you. Why, yes. Kaneko looked up shyly. Is there something you need of me, Black Lightning Sensei? Just call me Kuro, he said, looking up and smiling softly. Actually, another student needed a little help with their training. Would you mind helping him out for me? Me? Kaneko asked, shocked. Why you shouldn't trust me with something like that? Bah, nonsense. Kuro waved his hand dismissively. Follow me. Shihai was moving back and forth between two shadows when he saw Kuro. What do you want? He asked dryly. Oh, I wanted you to train with someone, Kuro said simply. Shihai looked at him in confusion before it dawned on him. You didn't. Shihai's face went from black to a very dark gray. Komori-chan, Kuro looked behind him and Kanoki's head poked out from behind him. Play nice. Kuro leads 𝐷𝐸 to his first victim student, a student with a muscled tail, who was swinging from tree to tree. Ojiro-kun, Kuro called over. The boy dropped down before seeing 𝐷𝐸. Most of the WANA students were busy training to notice the appearance of the squad. 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐴 managed, his face as pale as a sheet. "What's he doing here? Wasn't he arrested?" "Yeah," 𝐀𝐦 shrugged as if this was a normal Thursday. "This guy is going to teach you martial arts. There aren't really many experts left out there, much less ones who were free. So I had to get a little creative." "Get a little creative," 𝐍𝐴 echoed. "I shouldn't even be surprised anymore. Just know my parents will sue if I get killed." 𝐀𝐦 was standing around as he felt a hand touch his shoulder. "Last time someone tried to copy my quirk, Monomacon," 𝐀𝐦 said softly. "It didn't end too well." 𝐁𝐸 paled. How did 𝐀𝐻 know it was him? 𝐀𝐻 turned around. "As you recently learned, I have multiple quirks." 𝐀𝐻 turned around. "It's probably not a good idea to disclose what quirks you've copied." 𝐁𝐸 paled as he realized what 4 quirks he got. Some of them, like Aegis, weren't all too powerful, but what was that one? "You should probably dispel it before it takes you over," 𝐀𝐻 said. "Trust me, it's not a pretty sight." 𝐁𝐸 did what he was told, the quirk he had copied instilling an intolerable amount of fear in him. "Now, as far as I know, your body isn't strong enough to use certain quirks," 𝐀𝐻 said. "Anyways, we need to change that." "Koda-kun," 𝐀𝐻 noticed the boy trying to shout to increase the strength of his vocal cords. "I personally don't think that's an efficient way to strengthen your vocal cords." Koda jumped and turned around, startled. "𝐀𝐦 Koda signed. "Instead of trying to shout at the top of your lungs, you need to get used to talking more," 𝐀𝐻 said. "Try your best not to use sign language while you're here." But," Koda muttered, barely audible. "That's why I brought someone for you to talk to," 𝐀𝐻 said. "Koda-kun," Toga chirped, tackling the boy. "Himiko-san," Koda exclaimed, though it was barely louder than a whisper. "Don't you need to train?" "Himiko's not here as a student, but as a member of my special division," 𝐀𝐻 explained. "Since the quirk training I have planned for her is rather violent, she's here as a tutor rather than a student." Koda-kun Toga lifted the boy to his feet. "𝐀𝐻 said that we would be great friends. I'm so excited." 𝐀𝐻 walked away, smirking as he could almost feel Koda's glare on him. Kosai turned as he heard the sound of his quirk being shattered. He turned to see 𝐀𝐻 with a lizard man. "𝐀𝐻-sensei," he said enthusiastically. "What?" He was cut off as the lizard man dashed to attack him. He panicked and sent out an air wall, which the lizard man cut in half. "This is Spinner," 𝐀𝐻 introduced. "He will be helping you with the durability of your quirk." "You better prepare, brat," Spinner said with an aggressive tone. "Because by the time I'm done with you, you won't ever see a reptile the same ever again." "Red Riot Unbreakable," Kirishima shouted as he pushed his quirk to the limit. 𝐀𝐻 had come up with the name when he saw Kirishima use the max output of his quirk for the first time. He punched a tree, completely shattering it. "Not bad," 𝐀𝐻 said. "If it weren't for the stupid rules here, I would like to train you a bit harder." "Rules?" Kirishima asked, turning to see the head of security. "What rules?" "I'm not allowed to train you too hard," 𝐀𝐻 shrugged. "Let's leave it at that." Kirishima reverted to his normal form, confused. "Anyways, for now, I want to work on the time limit of your quirk, rather than your Red Riot Unbreakable form." Kirishima nodded. He knew that 𝐀𝐻's training was hellish, but what kind of man would he be to back down a challenge? Kaibara-sen was drilling through the ground with his legs, trying to push the limits of his gyrate quirk. "Your quirk proficiency isn't bad," 𝐀𝐻 said, catching the boy's attention, "but your fighting style needs some work." "I'm not even working on that," Sen pointed out bluntly. "I know," 𝐀𝐻 said. "But combining your quirk with martial arts would be a better use of your time." Sen nodded. He was thinking about learning martial arts, but his classmates kept on dragging him around to put up with their antics. "All right," he said. "Teach me." After leaving Nito to work on his quirk copying and exercising with Magni, the real 𝐀𝐻 went to a quiet, secluded place to meditate. He sat down on a rock and concentrated, attempting to bring himself to his subconscious. "Why are you here?" 𝐀𝐻 opened his eyes when he heard All for One speaking to him. 𝐀𝐻 smiled as he looked around the entral void and sat down, a chair materializing behind him. "Come, sit," 𝐀𝐻 said as another chair and a table appeared in front of him. All for One hesitantly moved and sat down. "What do you want?" All for One questioned aggressively. "To play," 𝐀𝐻 said as a game of shogi appeared on the table. "What is the meaning of this?" All for One asked, now irritated. One can learn a lot through a game of shogi, Kiro said as he moved a piece forward. That is true, 𝐴ll said as he moved a piece. Why do you want to learn about me? So you could beat the version of me out there? Please, Kiro said as he moved another piece. I already know about how you fight. I promised I would save you, so I want to get to know you better. Midoriya Izuku, 𝐴ll said as he moved his piece. You really are an interesting one. The two played for some time, talking about how the world was outside of Kiro's subconscious. 𝐴ll was very interested in hearing about the state of the League of Villains. There was one more thing I wanted to ask you about, Kiro said as he moved a piece. Checkmate? Fuck, 𝐴ll sighed. I wouldn't think I would lose to you of all people. What is this last question you have? Kiro smirked. Kiro sighed as he opened his eyes back in the real world. He thought about doing it now, but he decided to wait a few more hours. After all, he was in a training camp. He might as well train a few people before he did anything drastic. Sato was lifting weights while working out, trying to extend the time limit of his quirk. That may help a little bit. Sato turned to the source of the voice and saw Kiro. But I think you need to get a little adrenaline pumping in you if you really want to up the effectiveness in your quirk. Kaboom, Fukudashi Manga shouted, causing a rock to explode. He rubbed his throat, sighing. This wasn't going anywhere. That's an interesting quirk. He turned to see Kiro, who was reading a book and looking at him. How's your close-range fighting? Not too good, sir, Manga admitted. I've never needed a reason to use it. Just call me Kiro, Kiro replied. It's important to keep a balance. Sometimes you won't always get a team. Manga nodded, realizing the hero was right. Now, I want you to work on using your quirk while fighting in close-range combat. Gyro stabbed her earlobes into a stone cliff, amplifying the volume. After a little while, she could hear the faint sound of a blast beat. Curious, she extended her earphone jacks even further. After a little while, she realized someone was playing some music on the other side. Maybe she could actually enjoy herself while training. Meanwhile, on the other side of the cliff, Kiro walked away, leaving the MP3 player and a speaker with the metal music to freak out and cram to playlist on shuffle. 𝐀𝐦 was continuing to cause explosions in the boiling water, starting to get agitated. He was doing the same thing over and over, and wasn't showing much improvement. Katsuki-kun, Kiro said. 𝐀𝐦 was always 𝐀𝐦 to him, but 𝐀𝐦 couldn't know that. Come with me. I have some rather important training to do with you. 𝐀𝐦 muttered something under his breath, and he stepped out. As he was about to go to dress up, Kiro walked over and handed him a spare set of clothes. Wear these. 𝐀𝐦 put them on, noting they were a bit heavy. By the time he sensed something wrong, it was too late. Kiro pressed a button, and the weight of the clothes increased dramatically. What the fuck is this? 𝐀𝐦 shouted. 150 kilograms, Kiro said, smirking. Now run with me, and no using your quirk. Fuck you, 𝐀𝐦 said as Kiro ran off. He contemplated a bit, decided that running was better than sitting in a glorified hot tub all day, and chased after him. 𝐀𝐦 realized that Kiro wasn't running at the normal pace of a human. He was going much faster. 𝐀𝐦 yelled and kept up with him, despite the weighted clothing. They ran for a couple hours. By the time 𝐀𝐦 was done, his limbs were on fire, screaming in pain at the slightest hint of movement. What the fuck was that? 𝐀𝐦 asked between pants. He was in a sitting position, but the clothes were still weighing on him. What was the point of this training? Why did Kiro specifically pick him to do this? Why couldn't he have picked stupid Deku, or anyone else to do this training? What do you think of Izuku? Kiro asked, mirroring the question that he had asked him on the first day of school. Shitty Deku will always be shitty Deku, 𝐀𝐦 scoffed. But you were right. He makes me want to try harder. Get stronger. Bullying him into submission was never right, and I know that now. He's my rival now, and I know I'm a lot stronger because of him, and vice versa. Kiro nodded, satisfied. It's good to see that you have the takes to become a real hero, he said, smiling. Now, I have a little gift for you. Gift? 𝐀𝐦 forced his head to look up at Kiro's smirking face. The man plucked a strand of hair off his head and offered it to the boy. What do you want me to do with this? 𝐀𝐦 asked, obviously annoyed. Is this a fucking joke or something because it's not funny, old man? Old man? I'm hurt, Kiro said, holding his chest in mock agony before his face turned back into his trademark smirk. As for what I want you to do. Simple. I want you to eat it. Papa. Iri bounded over to Kiro, looking up at him with expectant and pleading eyes. Do you know where Izumi-kun is? Kuro thought back to his past. I think Koda-kun might need some time right now, he said, patting the girl's head. He's a little mad right now. Why is he mad? Iri asked, tilting her head. Koda-kun doesn't like heroes, Kuro explained. His parents were heroes, and they left Koda-kun. Iri wasn't unfamiliar with concept of death, so she nodded sadly. Okay. She hugged her adoptive father. I hope he gets better. Me too, Kuro smiled and hugged the little girl back. Izuku walked up the mountain, following the small footprints up the trail. He saw Koda sitting on the mountain and walked over to him, placing a bowl of curry next to him. I notice you didn't have any dinner. Debbie, what are you doing here? Koda jumped and looked at the boy skeptically. How did you even find me? I followed your footprints, Izuku said. Leave me alone, Koda scoffed and looked away. Your parents were the water horses, weren't they? Izuku asked, looking off into the distance. Koda flinched at the mentioning of his parents. How do you know that? Koda demanded. Mandalay must have told you. I heard about the story when it happened, Izuku said, not turning his head to look at the boy. I'm really sorry for your loss. I don't need your stupid pity, Koda shouted. All you heroes and villains only use your quirks for violence. Not too long ago, Izuku sighed, feeling for the boy. There was a quirkless boy. Everyone told him he was quirkless, even the doctor. The boy never believed them, though, and rejected the reality that he was quirkless. By the time he came to reality with the fact, it had hurt even more. If you keep on rejecting reality, you will only succeed in hurting yourself. You cannot beat a river into submission. Leave, Koda demanded, seemingly not listening to a word of Izuku's story. I don't want to hear any more of your stupid words. Izuku looked at the boy and offered a small smile before leaving. Kuro found his way up the mountain half an hour later, seeing Koda sitting next to an empty boy. Fancy seeing you here, he said, causing the boy to jump. Iri's been looking for you. What do you want? Koda asked, agitated. First that broccoli-headed kid, and now the number 2 hero. Leave me alone. I like to come up here to think, Kuro replied simply. It's a really calm place for someone to sort out their thoughts. Koda relaxed a bit. Even if he was a stupid hero, he was there for the same reason as he was, and it wouldn't be fair to kick him out for doing the same thing he was. TSH, Koda scoffed before turning back to the forest. Being a hero isn't that fun, you know, Kuro said to the boy, causing him to stiffen. You constantly have to fight people and risk your life along with others to save the day. Why are you telling me about this? Koda asked aggressively. I know you don't like heroes, Kuro said, giving the boy a small smile. It's okay that you don't like heroes. I don't like them either. Heroes and villains took everything I had. My friends and family were taken from me as well. Koda stiffened a bit more. His hatred for heroes and villains had blinded him to the fact that heroes and villains were people too. They all had to suffer as well. They all felt pain and sadness. You know, Iri never knew her parents, he said, looking at Koda's shocked expression. She was abducted by the Yakuza. If I didn't step in, the Yakuza would be enforcing all kinds of terrible and painful experiments on her. No one even knowing of her existence. Why are you telling me this? Koda asked, more shocked than agitated this time. I'm not going to treat you like some kid, Koda-kun, Kuro said, looking at Koda with a serious expression. You're old enough to think for yourself. Sure, society sucks. I'm not going to deny you that. But heroes exist for a reason. If your parents weren't there when they were, 5 children your age will be suffering exactly like you are right now. Life isn't fair, Koda-kun. I know that fact all too well. Your parents may be gone, and I'm not gonna baby you about it. If you keep living in the past, you're never going to do shit with your life. You don't like society. Fine. But don't waste your life bitching about it and do something. Kuro stood up and walked away, Koda staring in shock at the man. No one ever swore to Koda before. He had heard what those words mean when the pussycats were arguing with each other, but no one swore to him. I'm not gonna baby you about it. Kuro's words rang in Koda's head. Kuro was treating Koda like an adult, not some hurt child. He thought about what Kuro said. He was right. If he didn't like it, he should do something about it, even if it meant becoming the very thing you hated to change it in the inside, just like Kuro. Koda stood up, a wild new outlook on life. Shigaraki and Kurogiri stood with 2 other people and 6 nomas that all for one hand lent him. He was thankful that most of his team were nomas since none of them could be tardy. Hey, let's go kill everyone now, Muscular shouted. Since everyone's here, Shigaraki smirked, looking back at his team. Let's go wreak some havoc. 𝗬𝗲𝗊 and Shoto were eating soba that 𝗬𝗲𝗊 had snuck in. So, how's school? 𝗬𝗲𝗊 asked as he slurped on his food. It's all right, Shoto said, looking at his brother. He looked so different when he was in his costume. How's putting up with Kuro? Not all right, 𝗬𝗊𝗊 groaned to himself. Kuro's a real pain in the ass, but he gave me everything I have now, so I can't really complain. Shoto was about to speak when 𝗬𝗊𝗊 jumped up and over Shoto and launched a stream of blue fire. A loud shriek was heard, causing Shoto to turn around. What he saw was a humanoid creature with an exposed brain. 𝗬𝗊𝗊 touched a device in his ear. Attention all squad members, 𝗬𝗊𝗊 said with alertness in his voice. I have made combat with a 𝗚𝗚, preparing to engage. When he heard the warning, he dashed straight for 𝐀𝐦. He had briefed him on everything that had to do with One for All. Bakugo, he shouted, landing next to him. What the fuck? 𝐀𝐦 shouted, startled. The League is after you. They don't know about you having One for All, so keep it a secret, Kuro said. When 𝐀𝐦 nodded, he continued. They think they can turn you into a villain. Like hell they can, 𝐀𝐦 shouted. Good to hear, Kuro said, smirking. I have a plan. Spinner was with Kendo, Ajiro, Kirishima, and Tetsu talking about martial arts when a 𝗚𝗚 jumped out. Spinner unsheathed his swords and blocked the 𝗚𝗚's blow, sending him flying back. Listen up, kiddies, he shouted as he dashed towards the 𝗚𝗚. This shit ain't a drill. If you don't think you can handle villains yet, run. Like hell, Kirishima yelled, activating his quirk and uppercutting the 𝗚𝗚 in the jaw. Red Riot Unbreakable, Kendo jumped up, both gigantic mallets in hand, and slammed the 𝗚𝗚's head, spattering its brains. Yuck, Ojiro said as he looked at the splattered 𝗚𝗚. Yuck indeed, Tetsu agreed, looking away from the mess. Izuku, Ochako, and Toga were taking a walk in the forest when a 𝗚𝗚 attacked. Izuku grabbed Ochako and jumped back as Toga dodged the 𝗚𝗚's punch. The 𝗚𝗚 breathed fire in Toga's direction, but she jumped up, dodging the fire. Toga landed on the 𝗚𝗚's head, stabbing the creature's brain. With a roar, the 𝗚𝗚 fell over, dead. Villains, Izuku shouted. He looked around before the realization hit him like a truck. Koda. Go, Ochako called to him. Himi-chan and I can deal with things here. Izuku nodded, and he dashed for the cliff where he last saw the boy. Koda was about to leave when something crashed down behind him. He turned to see a maniacal villain with muscles bulging out of his body. A kid? You look familiar, the villain said, his maniacal smile widening. Oh, you look like those water weaklings. Man, their screams were amazing. Koda froze up. This was the villain that killed his parents. Well, boy, the villain smiled as he dashed towards the boy. Time to see mommy and daddy. As he was about to kill the boy, Izuku showed up and hit the man in the face, causing him to stumble backwards. Oh, he asked, looking at the young man with his sick and twisted smile. What's this? A little hero come to save the day? What are you doing? Koda demanded. Leave now, run away. I'm not going to run, Izuku said, looking back at the boy. I will save you. Pixie Bob and Tiger faced down a 𝗚𝗚. She summoned a golem and sent for it to attack the beast while Tiger dashed for it. The 𝗚𝗚 punched Tiger, sending him flying at Pixie Bob, and then punched the ground, causing a pillar of stone to destroy the golem. But what is that? Pixie Bob asked to herself. When she asked that, the 𝗚𝗚 started to glow pink and flew off before being stabbed in the brain with a pocket knife. That was a 𝗚𝗚, Magni said, revealing herself. The squad have been trained to deal with these things. You two should focus on protecting the kids. Kaminari and Mina were chatting it up at a campfire when a villain in a straitjacket appeared. They both jumped back in surprise when the villain's teeth extended into blades, intent on impaling them both. Before that could happen, Kuro dashed forward, pulling the kids back. He jumped up to meet the villain, black electricity crackling on his arm. Don't mind me, he said, punching the villain so hard that his head exploded. I'm just here to fry a moonfish. A beaten and bloodied Izuku stood against Muscular, who had a significantly less scars than the boy. Oi, 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 Muscular shouted. Aren't you forgetting something? Izuku realized too late. Muscular dashed for Koda, who was right behind Muscular at this point. No, he shouted as he dashed, his hand reaching out for the boy. At that moment, a black tendril shot out of Izuku's hand, grabbing the boy. Without thinking, he yanked his arm back, causing the boy to fly into his arm. Izuku placed the boy down, the tendril receding back into his arm. Izuku reasoned he would ask Kuro about it later. But for now, he had a villain to take care of. Pure rage washed over Izuku as he turned to the villain. This villain threatened Koda's life, and Izuku wasn't going to have any of it. One for all, he muttered to himself as he dashed towards the villain with everything he had, punching him square in the face. He felt his bones shatter, but he needed to go further beyond. Plus ultra. 1,000,000%. Izuku carried a sleeping Koda off the mountain when he saw it. Kurogiri had 𝐀𝐦 grasped around one arm. "𝐀𝐦!" Izuku yelled as Kurogiri opened a portal. 𝐀𝐦 looked over to Izuku and smirked. "Shitty Deku," he called back. "You better save me." The portal closed behind them as Izuku dashed forward, missing the portal by mere inches. He had failed. The League of Villains succeeded in their mission of capturing Katsuki Bakugo. But little did they know, kidnapping Kuro's successor was the biggest mistake they could ever make. Izuku sat in the hospital with Kirishima, Ida, Shoto, and Momo. The doctor said that the blow he did on Muscular irreversibly tore his muscles, and it would never be the same ever again. "I want to save 𝐀𝐦," Izuku said. "He's counting on me." "That's the spirit," Kirishima said. "We need to save Bakubro." "No," Ida said, holding his hand up in a stop position. "We need to let the pro heroes do their job." "Izuku." Their conversation was interrupted when Eri bounded in and climbing up a chair. "Izuku, Papa wanted me to show you a magic trick." "Magic trick?" Izuku asked. "Let me show you," Eri said, tugging on Izuku's injured arm. Izuku winced, but before he could tell the girl off, his arm started to glow. When Eri removed her hands, Izuku's scars were gone. "Magic? How?" Izuku started to ask, but was cut off by the sound of the door opening. Izuku turned to see Kuro. "That was her quirk." "Rewind. It's pretty self-explanatory," Kuro said. "Anyways, it's good that you're all here. I have a special mission for you." "What is it?" Shoto asked, cutting straight to the chase. Kuro smirked. "To save 𝐀𝐦." Later at the police station, Deadshot, Kuro, All Might, Best Jeanist, and Tsukachi were preparing 𝐀𝐻's rescue operation. "What do you mean you don't want me to go?" All Might demands. "Oh, 𝐀𝐻 can handle himself," Kuro waves his hand dismissively. "We both know you have more important things to do." All Might remained silent. "Anyways, I had already planned for this," Kuro said to the shock of the rest of the meeting. "Anyways, gather the heroes now. We wouldn't want to miss the signal." 𝐀𝐻 awoke in the base of the League of Villains. He saw Kurogiri and Shigaraki both look at him, as if they were waiting for him to wake up. "So you're finally awake, Katsuki Bakugo," Shigaraki said. Katsuki turns to the TV and saw Nezu, Shouta, and Vlad King. It seems that they were making some sort of apology for failing to protect the kids. Bullshit, 𝐀𝐻 thought. Kuro had planned for all of this. 𝐀𝐻 already knew the role he had. "Why am I here?" he growled at the villains, small explosions crackling in his hands, which were tied to the back of the chair. "You see," Shigaraki says, releasing 𝐀𝐻. "We sense the bitterness in your heart. That smile on your face. We think you would be a fine addition to the League of Villains. And we allowed the students to fight because we did not have a full grasp on the situation." 𝐀𝐻 heard his teacher's voice through the TV. "Ha, they didn't revoke my rights to combat yet," 𝐀𝐻 taunted. "You fucked up in picking me." "It seems that you have no interest in becoming a villain," Shigaraki notes, ignoring the boy's threat. He turns to the TV and looks at his mentor. "Maybe the force of my teacher will help open your eyes." The teacher smirked. "That's a wise decision, Shigaraki," he said, the wicked grin on his face only growing. "Good job." "May I ask what time it is?" 𝐀𝐻 asked. 8 p.m. "Why do you ask?" Kurogiri said instinctively. "Shut up," Shigaraki groans. "Knock him out. It's time to go." 𝐀𝐻 smirks as one for all courses through his arms. No, not his arms, his sweat. Sweat doesn't have bones to break or muscles to shatter, so it was a perfect way of strengthening his quirk. He holds his hand out, a devilish smirk on his face. "Checkmate," he says as he prepares for the ensuing explosion. Nuclear impact. All Might, Kamui Woods, Deadshot, and Best Jeanist are stunned when a gigantic explosion could be seen about 3 kilometers away. "That's the signal," Kuro said. "Let's move out." 𝐀𝐻 ran out of the base and made a left turn. Shit! There were burns all over his skin and dust covered his whole body. He really needed to talk to Kuro about finding a way around that. 𝐀𝐻. 𝐀𝐻 looked up and saw Izuku, Kirishima, Ida, and Momo in really shitty costumes. 𝐀𝐦 sent us here to come get you. Those disguises are really shitty, 𝐻𝐡𝐚 pointed out. Izuku huffed and 𝐻𝐡𝐚 smiled. But thank you. Mount Lady runs over to the building where Tiger's tracker to see the building in ruins and Ragdoll unconscious. Tiger runs up to the woman and grabs her in her arms as black liquid starts pouring everywhere, causing Nomus to appear. The two heroes back up as a man in a suit appears, a huge smirk on his face. Well, he says as he looks at the pro heroes. Would you look at what we have? He was cut off when 𝐓𝐴 flies over and decks him straight in the jaw, causing him to stagger backwards. Round 2, asshole, she says, smirking. Round 2 it is. All for One agrees as he lets loose a powerful shockwave of power. The pro heroes jump down where the explosion was to see black liquid dripping everywhere. Kurogiri and Shigaraki were left unconscious by the giant explosion, but Namu were appearing from the black liquid. The heroes spring into action, taking on as much Namu as they can. A Namu is about to punch Edshot when Kuro appears, grabbing the Namu and crushing its head. All Might, go, he shouted. You know what you need to do. All Might nodded and jumped. Kuro turned back to the army of Nomus and smirked. All right, you bundle of freaks, he said as he channeled a ball of fire with the second's quirk element. Let's see how you deal with this. All for One and Shimura Nana stand in the middle of a huge crater, staring each other down. I won't make the same mistake again, All for One declared. Sure you won't, Nana said sarcastically. But there are 2 more of us. We will defeat you. They start to duke it out, exchanging powerful blows. All for One bulks up his arm and punches Nana, sending her flying. Before All for One can further attack her, he turns around and holds his hand up, blocking a punch from All Might. All Might, All for One says with mock glee, venom pouring out of the name. It's good to see you as well. Shut up, All Might shouted as he launches another punch as Nana flies back to punch from the opposite direction of All Might. All for One holds out both of his arms to block the attacks, before sending a wave of pressure, sending the 2-1 for all users flying. The 3 enter a furious exchange of blows, each blow causing a small crater to form underneath them. You're both pathetic, All for One said as he blows them back with another wave of pressure. You're all bark and no bite. You forgot about one thing, a voice said as a pillar of earth juts up on the floor below All for One and hits him square in the chin. Kuro dashes forward between the 2-1 for all users, punching All of One in the face and shattering his mask. Me. Black lightning, All for One spat as he stood up and started floating. This isn't your fight. Oh, but it is, Kuro said, smirking. Kuro 𝐍𝐸, 9th user of One for All. At your service. All Might looked at the man in shock. 9th user? How is he the 9th user? Izuku was the 9th user. And Kuro lied. He was a wielder of One for All after all. Kuro, he shouted. Not now, All Might, Kuro said, blocking a blow from All for One. I'll explain later. Let's deal with this clown first. Nana and All Might nodded to each other as they rushed All for One with Kuro. The 3 start to overwhelm him and All for One flies back. See? This isn't that bad, Kuro said, smiling. All for One floats up into the air as his arm turns into a hulking monstrosity. You can use my power. The other All for One's voice rings out in his head. It'll make things a lot easier. Shut up, All for Two, Kuro muttered under his breath. All for Two? The newly named All for Two asked. Let's do this, Kuro said as black electricity crackled throughout his body. All for One launched a devastating punch with his amalgamated arm. But Kuro grabbed his fist with both of his hands as All Might and Shimura Nana jumped up to face level with All for One. This is for your crimes against humanity, Nana shouted, her fist pulling back to prepare a punch. United States of Smash. All Might shouted as the 2 punched the villain for everything they had. The villain slammed into the ground, his face completely caved in. They had won. All Might held up his fist as the last embers of One for All faded away. They had won. The news helicopter arrived with the police and pro heroes a few minutes later. They instantly went to work, making rescue operations. The helicopter lands and the news people came running out to the 3 heroes. What happened? Oh, this is nothing, Kuro said, shaking off his bruised arm. Just the strongest villain alive wanted to kill us or something. So we punched him really hard. That's amazing. The news reporter asked before turning to Nana. And you are? All Might and Nana nodded to each other. My name is Shimura Nana, Nana started. And I am the one who trained All Might. Wow. The reporter turned back to her camera. Are you hearing this, folks? The number 1 and number 2 hero, along with the mentor of all, might have banded together to defeat a powerful villain. Do you three have anything to say? The three looked at each other and smiled. They knew what they had to do. The three of them pointed a finger at the camera and said unanimously, "You're next." Izuku, Kaken, Ida, Kirishima, and Momo were all in Izuku at Kuro's place, as he instructed. Tears poured down Izuku's face when the three made their declaration. Kirishima, Momo, and Ida cheered, thinking it meant that the three were addressing the villains. But Izuku saw it differently. He knew that All Might's time was up, and that Izuku had to be the one to carry on his legacy. Kaken put a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Since Kuro had briefed him on everything, he knew what Izuku was going through. They were now on the same boat. Kuro lead All Might and Nana back to his apartment. When I explain, I want Izuku and Kaken to be there, Kuro said. I get young Midoriya. But why would you want young Bakugo there as well? All Might asked. Yesterday, I named Katsuki Bakugo as my successor, Kuro said simply. You what? Nana shrieked, causing the two men to flinch. You didn't even consult me. I wanted Eri-chan to be your successor. Geez lady, calm down, Kuro said as he opened the door. If she becomes strong enough, I'm sure Izuku will name her as his successor. As they opened the door, the students came rushing to them. That was so manly, Kirishima yelled. Yes, yes, Kuro said, waving a bruised hand dismissively. Now that the danger is gone, we need you all to go home. All right, Ida said. Thank you for letting us stay at your place, Kuro-sensei. We will call our parents and get going. Right? He shot a look to Kirishima and Momo. Yes, Kirishima said sadly as they filed out of the apartment. As Izuku and Kaken were about to go too, Kuro stopped them. We have something very important to discuss, he said. The two boys nodded as they went back inside. Kuro led all of them into the support group room inside. He had a lot to discuss, and he wasn't sure if he was ready. As everyone sat down, Kuro let out a shaky breath. He knew this time was coming, and he had already prepared. I apologize for lying to you all, he started, catching the attention of everyone on the room. What could Kuro be lying about? But my name is not Kuro J-SAI. That is merely a name I came up for myself when I arrived here. What do you mean arrived here? All Might asked. Of course, Nana already knew, but everyone else was looking at the man curiously. And if that's the case, what's your real name? My name is Midoriya Izuku, Kuro started, his eyes scanning the room to see shocked faces from everyone except Nana. And I am from the future. And that's all of it, Kuro said, sighing as he slumped in his chair. What? The fuck, Kaken said. So you still gave me your power even though I treated you like that? Well, yeah, Kuro said. It's not like I'm going to be around forever. I've been meaning to ask, Izuku said, raising his hand. During my fight with a muscular villain, I shot out a black tendril to save Kota. Do you know what that was? Oh, that was Black Whip, Kuro said, shrugging. What do you mean that was Black Whip? Nana said, looking shocked for the first time in that entire meeting, as Kuro had already told her the events before. Oh yeah, since One for All is getting stronger, wielders past the 8th generation are able to unlock the quirks of previous owners, Kuro said. So what you're saying is, Izuku asked. Yeah, Kuro said. You and Kaken will start training with your quirks tomorrow. I have a meeting to attend to. What meeting? All Might asked. What meeting can possibly be more important than this? Kuro smirked. Meet me tomorrow, he said. You'll find out. Kuro laid in bed and focused on his subconscious. He appeared before All for Two, a grimace on his face. You know what I've come here for? All for Two smiled. Finally, he said. You know, after being inside you for so long, I think I've decided. Decided on what? Kuro asked. I'm going to help you out, All for Two said. I'll be your partner. Thank you, Kuro smiled as he saw All for Two extend his hand. Now go on, my successor, All for Two said as they shook hands. Go save the world. Magic, Eri chirped as she applied her quirk on Kuro, rewinding his body back to the week before, giving him back his quirk. Thank you, Eri, Kuro said before he heard a knock on the door. He opened it to see All Might in his thinner form. Welcome, Yagi-san. Thank you, Kuro, All Might said before walking in. So what was that important meeting you had the other day? I can revert your body to your prime, Kuro said, causing All Might's jaw to drop. How? He asked before dropping the question. You know what? Nothing can surprise me anymore. Kiro put a hand on All Might's shoulder, using Yuri's quirk to rewind All Might's body, giving him his quirk back in the process. So cool, Yuri squealed. You can do magic too. Yes, I can, Yuri, Kiro said, smiling softly at the girl. The door next to Kiro's opened and Izuku walked out. So, are we going to do this training thing? And he cut off when he saw that All Might looked several years younger. What the hell? Rewind, Kiro said simply. I'm not going to ask any more, Izuku grumbled. Great, Kiro clapped his hands together. Meet me at the beach in 30. I have an errand to run. 𝐻𝐴 sat in his cell, contemplating ways to get out. The sound of his cell door opening caused him to look up to see the very man who arrested him. What do you? 𝐻𝐴 was cut off as Kiro grabbed his face. What the hell do you want? You know, Kiro said as 𝐻𝐴 started to scream in pain. I've decided that jail wasn't enough. Izuku, All Might, and Nana walked over to the beach to see Katsuki already running across the beach with a weird set of clothes on. What is he doing? Izuku asked. You see, giving him one for all was a spur-of-the-moment decision. They all turned to see Kiro not far behind. So I'm currently having him train his body to get accustomed to his quirk. I see, All Might said. Care to explain how you were able to rewind my body? Nope, Kiro said, popping the P in nope. I can't reveal all my cards, in case I hypothetically turn evil and kill you all. What? The 3-1 for all users asked in unison. Kidding, Kiro joked. Of course, he didn't know if he would be turning evil or not. Let's hope not. Anyways, little me, I'm going to train you in how to use Black Whip. You know, 𝐻𝐴 is going to be turning into a boarding school, All Might said to Kiro. Yeah, Kiro sighed. Well, I can't necessarily leave my complex. I promised Kenji-san to make sure Stain wouldn't do anything stupid. That's where Stain is living? All Might asked, not even shocked anymore. You really trust him that much? Well, I'm not dead yet, am I? Kiro asked. Good point, All Might said. Are you still going to retire? Kiro asked the man. Since All Might's skinny form was now public, he still did have the choice. I think I will, All Might said, sighing. I need to spend more of my time training young Midoriya and young Bakugo now. Japan will be safe in your hands. This is my second time being number 1, Kiro said absently. I thought it would be a bit more climactic. Me too, All Might said. I thought I would die on the field of battle. You did last time, Kiro said sadly. I would rather it not happen again. All Might nodded as the two continued to walk to 𝐻𝐴 in silence. Kiro sighed as he looked at his phone. He scrolled through his contacts as he decided to let the other staff deal with going to ask permission about the dorms. But he decided that it would be a good idea to talk to 𝐀𝐭's parents about 𝐀𝐭's training. So he decided to take that one. He put on an explosive-proof vest under his hero costume and set off. A few minutes of leaping throughout the city later, he landed in front of 𝐀𝐭's house. Memories flooding through his head, Kiro knocked on the door. Surprisingly, 𝐀𝐭 was the one who opened the door. What the fuck do you want? Idiot, Kiro heard Mitsuki's voice rang throughout the hall as she stormed up and hit 𝐀𝐭 on the head. I'm sorry about that. No worries, Kiro said, chuckling a little bit. May I come in? There are some things I need to discuss with your family. A couple minutes later, Musaru, Mitsuki, and 𝐀𝐭 had gathered and sat on a couch together, while Kiro sat down on a couch on the other side of a coffee table. So, there are 2 things I need to discuss, Kiro said simply. Firstly, due to the villain attacks, 𝐻𝐴 has decided to become sort of a boarding school, Kiro said. I came to ask your permission. What the fuck? 𝐀𝐭 exclaimed. Do you really think? Of course he would be fine with it. Mitsuki smiled as she hit her son on the head. Katsuki, shut the fuck up. Shut it, hag, 𝐀𝐭 yelled at his mother. Says the one who was kidnapped, Mitsuki said, hitting his head again. Actually, about that, Kiro rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. The 3 turned to him. That was kind of staged. Staged? Musaru asked, speaking up for the first time in this conversation. Yeah, 𝐀𝐭 scoffed. Crazy bastard wanted me to nuke the League of Villains base. What? Musaru exclaimed. That's absolutely fucking badass, Mitsuku said, giving her son a noogie. Quit it, old hag, 𝐀𝐭 yelled, struggling to break himself free. That leads me to the second thing, Kiro said. I wanted to take Katsuki-kun as a student. I thought it would be common sense to tell you 2 about it first. Badass, Mitsuki chirped again. You better work hard, brat. Fuck, 𝐀𝐦 muttered under his breath before getting hit on the head again by his mother. Kuro was sitting alone at the beach, trying to sort out his thoughts. What are you going to do now? 𝐴𝐼 asked the man. Train, Kuro replied, sighing and leaning back on his arms. I need to get a hang of this new quirk. Good luck with that, 𝐴𝐼 sneered. Thanks, Kuro said, standing up. He closed his eyes and concentrated. After all, his students weren't the only one who had things to learn. 𝐴𝐻𝐸, Toga squealed, tackling the girl in a hug. Our dorms are next to each other, isn't that exciting? Yeah. 𝐴𝐻𝐸 stammered out, her face tomato red. That's great. Too close, Himi-chan. Toga looked at the girl with an innocent look. But won't we be doing more intimate things later on? What? 𝐴𝐻𝐸 exclaimed, pushing the girl off of her. Since when did you start thinking that? Kuro-ni said that two people who loved each other did intimate things, Toga said. He told me 𝐴𝐻𝐸 would explain it to me. Kuro-sensei, 𝐴𝐻𝐸 whispered, her eyes filling with the rage of a woman scorned. We will be having words. Hey guys, the two turned to see Izuku, dragging his luggage with a weird black tendril. Did you get your dorms assigned yet? Yeah, Toga chirped. What's that weird thing that's attached to your arm? Oh, it's my quirk, Izuku said, shrugging. Kuro-sensei wanted me to drag my luggage with it, so I can train with it. Your quirk? 𝐴𝐻𝐸 asked. Wasn't it super strength? It's a long story. Izuku rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. You should probably ask Kuro-sensei. Whatever you say, 𝐴𝐻𝐸 said. Anyways, let's go set up our dorms. Kuro looked at Class 1A dorms, nostalgia rushing through him. He started to walk towards the dorms, but after the sound of crashing, explosions, and a little burning, he decided to go see what Mr. Compress was up to. Maybe he could finally talk to Gentle. A marvelous show, Mr. Compress. Gentle smiled at the masked man, who was taking off his coat. A most excellent job, Gentle, Compress relied, smiling behind his mask. You are quite the showman. You undermine your own talents, Mr. Compress, Gentle replied. My popularity has skyrocketed ever since I started our little collaboration. That makes sense. Gentle jumped as the familiar voice of the new #1 hero could be heard. He turned to see Black Lightning, the man in the flesh. Yo, Kuro said, holding up a hand in greeting. Gentle, unsurprisingly startled, grabbed his knife and stabbed at the hero. The blade went right through the hero's face, as if he were never there. Compress, Gentle shouted, turning to see the masked man smash one of his marbles, revealing the #1 hero. Magic, Kuro said jokingly. What is the meaning of this? Gentle exclaimed. Relax, Kuro said, putting his hands up. I just wanted to talk. Talk? Gentle pointed his knife at the hero. What would I gain from talking to a hero like you? Well, I may be a hero, but I'm also the sponsor of your friend here. Kuro jutted a thumb to Mr. Compress. It seems you two have been doing well for each other, which is why I wanted to extend an offer. Offer? Gentle asked. What kind of offer? Well, I've decided I want to pay you to have your own kind of show, Kuro said. But there has to be some conditions. I wouldn't be lying if I said you didn't have my interest, Black Lightning-san, Gentle replied, smiling as his eyes portrayed his intrigue. Well, for starters, you and your partner, 𝐴𝐵 will have to live in the same apartment complex as Compress over here, Kuro started. Secondly, I want you to join my squad of ex-villains and work under me. Before Gentle could open his mouth, Kuro continued. You will still be committing some acts that edge towards villainy rather than heroism with some restrictions. But you will get the fame and credibility of working under the #1 hero, as well as some leeway for committing certain crimes such as using your quirk for vigilantism, or whatever they call it these days. Gentle pondered on the hero's offer. He didn't have to give up being a criminal completely, and Kuro said he was willing to sponsor just an act. A normal hero wouldn't go this far for a villain. The news of Black Lightning treating villains with respect unheard of by other heroes seemed to be true. All right, Gentle said, sipping a cup of tea that seemingly came from nowhere. I'm in Black Lightning, a reporter shouted at him. Kuro had just been doing his groceries to prepare for the next support group when a lucky reporter found him. You haven't agreed to a single interview since you became the #1 hero. May I ask why? You can just kill her. 𝐴𝐼 mused in Kuro's head, as the man looked at the camera with a dejected expression. It's not like anyone can stop you. Shut it, 𝐴𝐼, Kuro thought back. 𝐴𝐼 grumbled a bit in his head. He hated that nickname. Well, I was busy recovering from the fight with 𝐴ll-for-one, 𝐬𝐻 said. His name wasn't a secret anymore, so he didn't have to hide it. I also had to sort out a couple situations with my students. Ah, the new #1 hero has already taken 𝗵𝘃𝗧𝐽. The reporter shouted at the camera before turning back to 𝐬𝐻. Never mind that, there has been a question burning in all of our heads since All Might retired and you took his place. Will you uphold his legacy? No, 𝐬𝐻 said sternly, his gaze causing the reporter and cameraman to flinch. I am not All Might. I do not want to be a symbol of peace like he was. He was undoubtedly a great symbol, and I respect and idolize him for that. But I want to represent something else. I want to be a symbol of equality. I am a hero that fights for equality of all people. No matter what quirk they have, what they look like, or anything like that. Everybody deserves a chance. Too many have turned to villainy when they thought they had no option left because of the way society treats them, and I will fight to stop that. Taking the reporter's silence as a sign to leave, he walked off in a now sour mood. To prepare for the provisional hero license exams, 𝐲𝗏 started. You are all going to come up with at least 2 signature, you mean super moves, 𝐬𝐻 said, cutting man off. He had been stopping by so much that he had a chair and table in the back, so the bulky man was crammed in a student's chair and table. Yes, 𝐲𝗏 groaned, pinching his nose. If that really makes you feel better. At that moment, ectoplasm, Symmetros, and a newly healed Lady Midnight bust in. Let's do this, the classroom cheered. 𝐬𝐻 smiled, remembering Class 1A's cheerful attitude despite the war. That is, before they started losing people. He stood up as the class shuffled out of the room. Maybe he would use that. He could just pawn it off as something else. 𝐻𝐻 impact, 𝐀𝐦 shouted, using his original special move. He was stopped when 𝐬𝐻 grabbed his face and used explosion, launching him a few feet. What the fuck, 𝐀𝐦 exclaimed. How did you use my quirk? What the fuck was that for? Copy, 𝐬𝐻 shrugged. You've already used that technique. Come up with something new. TCH, 𝐀𝐦 scoffed. Maybe spar with Deku. Nothing like fighting to near death to come up with super moves, 𝐬𝐻 said, walking away. Fine, asshole, 𝐀𝐦 said as he sullied over to Deku. Momo was sitting down, thinking on something to create for a super move when a roll of paper tapped her head. She looked up to see 𝐬𝐻 holding a roll of blue paper. Is that a blueprint? Just look, 𝐬𝐻 said, tossing the paper on her lap. Is this? She looked at the paper, her face turning sheet white. Railgun, 𝐬𝐻 smirked. Have fun. Red Riot Unbreakable, Kirishima shouted as he pushed his quirk to his limits. After practicing for a while, he managed to hold the form for at least 1 minute. He clasped his hands together and swung it at an ectoplasm clone, sending it flying through several large rocks. Crimson Mace. Not bad, 𝐬𝐻 said, catching the student's attention. Thanks, 𝐬𝐻-sensei, Kirishima said, reverting back to his normal form. Is there something you needed? 𝐬𝐻 thought about it. As another ectoplasm clone appeared, 𝐬𝐻 walked up to one of the stone pillars and grabbed it, lifting it off the ground and smashing the ectoplasm clone with that. He lightly punched Kirishima on the shoulder as he looked at the scene that just unfolded. Think about that. Your quirk has developed well. Focus on your surroundings. 𝐬𝐻 and Midnight overlooked the students' training. Where's Toga-chan? Midnight asked, scanning the crowd our training students. She isn't ready to see you again, 𝐬𝐻 said. She may have come back to her cheery self, but she still hasn't forgiven herself for the way she attacked you. Speaking of which, what the fuck was up with that? Midnight asked, her seductive nature halting for just a second. 𝐬𝐻 took out his phone and scrolled down a bit. He tapped on an image and gave it to Midnight. Is that a villain profile? Midnight asked in shock. No one was there when her mother abused her on the daily, 𝐬𝐻 said. Everyone she knew called her a monster. One day, she snapped and killed her mother and ran away. That day, she became a villain instead of a monster. And it would have continued to be that way if I didn't find her. I enrolled her in UA so she could learn the concepts of camaraderie and friendship, because she never really got that as a kid. Oh, Midnight looked up from the phone and at 𝐬𝐻. I didn't know. You couldn't have, 𝐬𝐻 said, putting a hand on the woman's shoulder. I took extensive measures to cover things up. I want to tell her that I forgive her, Midnight said. From what I can tell, she's been going through a lot and made huge progress, and she relapsed during her exam. It's not her fault. I'll bring you to next support group, 𝐬𝐻 said. I do want a pro hero to see what's going on in my villain rehab program. but I don't want reporters there. I'm worried that 𝐡𝐸 might kill someone if that happened. 𝐡𝐸 is a part of your program, Midnight exclaimed. Oh yeah, Kuro rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. You missed quite a bit. Nana sat on a bench, looking dejected. She was still hung up about her grandson and all for one. Hey, Nana! Nana looked up to see Mariko dragging Rukyu along. Our Rumi-chan. I told you not to hold my hand in public, Rukyu exclaimed. It's indecent. Awa is my little Ruko-chan scared of a little hand-holding Tilda, Maruko teased. Hey, Nana said, smiling as an attempt to hide her current feelings. Hey, Nana-chan. Maruko stopped in front of her friend. How are you? I'm all right, Nana said, her smile fading as she went back to looking at the ground. Nana-chan, do you want to talk? Rukyu sat down next to Nana, putting a hand on her shoulder. We're here for you. Yeah, Maruko sat down on the other side of the bench, mimicking her girlfriend. We're your friends, and friends are there for each other. A soft smile sprouted on Nana's face. Thanks, guys. Kuro was welcomed back to his apartment by a huge stack of paperwork. Kuro didn't know or care where it came from, but he knew he had to do it. Oh God help me, he muttered to himself as he sat down at his desk and started working. Papa, Iri ran over and gave Kuro a big hug. Welcome back. Thank you, Iri, Kuro said, patting the little girl's head. How was school today? School was great, Iri chirped. Izumi-kun said he wanted to be a hero like Papa one day. Really? Kuro's smile softened. That's great. Papa, can we go to the mall? Iri asked. Of course, Iri. Kuro stood up as the small girl climbed up on his shoulders. We? Iri squealed as Kuro stood to his full height. I'm flying, Kuro's smile widened as they headed out for the mall. 𝐬𝐸 was out looking around shopping malls to scout out Black Lightning. He wanted to personally make contact with the man, and hearing he had a young daughter, shopping malls would be the best place to go. It took a few hours, but 𝐬𝐸 eventually found the familiar face along with a small child on his shoulders. Excuse me, 𝐬𝐸 walked up to the hero, offering his hand. My name is Yotsubashi Rikiya and I am with the Detnerat Company. We have been looking for you as to offer you a sponsorship. Ah, I would love to discuss something like that. Though I didn't expect the CEO himself to come down for little old me, Kuro said, reaching in his back and using creation to create headphones and an MP3 player, offering it to his adopted daughter. Here, Iri. This kind man and I have to talk about grown-up things. Can you put these on? Sure, Iri chirped, putting on the headphones and sifting through the music in the MP3 player. Come, 𝐬𝐸 said, walking over to the nearest table and sat down, Kuro sitting on the opposite side. We would like to offer you our services in hero support technology for an exclusivity contract. Cut the crap, Kuro waved his hand dismissively. First of all, I know the shit you pull with the black market. Your products aren't as good as the ones I currently use. And before you ask, yes, I have tested your products. They're ass. 𝐬𝐸 recoiled slightly in shock. Since when did a hero ever use the black market? Okay, he pinched the bridge of his nose. Since you already know about the army, I wanted to recruit you. Ah, now we're talking, Kuro said, clapping his hands together. Fuck no and fuck you. What? 𝐬𝐸 was startled at the bluntness of Kuro's rejection. Do you know who we— Yeah, Kuro made the Meta Liberation Army sign with his middle finger. I have a better idea. We call a temporary truce. Truce? 𝐬𝐸 echoed. Yeah, I know what you want, Kuro said. Give me 2 months to try and change the laws on quirk usage. And if not, I won't stop you from attacking the Hero Association. Deal? 𝐬𝐸 thought about it. Black Lightning would be their biggest obstacle, so this truce would eliminate him with minimal casualties. He just had to wait a bit longer. Deal. The two powerhouses shook hands. I'll make. A small step for Frankenstein was in the alleyways, working his way through the general thugs. Kuro had approved he'd do this since he still needed his fix of blood. As he slashed another villain, he heard a loud crash. What the fuck do you want? 𝐡𝐸 didn't even have to turn around to know that the person behind him was Kuro. But he turned around anyways. God knows what that man would do behind 𝐡𝐸's back. I actually came to offer you a gift, Kuro said, revealing himself by stepping out of the dust cloud. A gift? 𝐡𝐸 echoed, curious. Kuro's gifts usually involve top-of-the-line blades and the such, so he was suppressing his excitement. Here, Kuro plucked a hair off his head and offered it to the reformed villain. What the fuck do you want me to do with this? Stain asked, agitated. Eat it, 𝐬𝐻 said with a dead serious expression on his face. It'll give you unimaginable power. Fuck no, Stain said, using a kunai to chop the tiny strand of hair in half. That's disgusting. Suit yourself, 𝐬𝐻 said before vanishing in the shadows. What the fuck was that? Stain thought to himself before a terrified cry reached his ears. Never mind that. I still have work to do. Yo, what's up? Present Mike asked Midnight as the woman heaved a sigh. He, Midnight, and 𝐲𝐻𝐬 were hanging out at a local coffee shop. 𝐬𝐻 invited me to this villain support group thing, Midnight said, sipping her coffee. Damn, I wish this was alcohol. Oh yeah, you haven't met 𝐬𝐻's squad, 𝐲𝐻𝐬 pinched the bridge of his nose. I don't know how 𝐬𝐻 does it, but he seems to have a whole team of villains. I pity you. Tell me about it, Midnight sighed, leaning back into her chair. I hope I can at least meet a cute guy or something. Haim-chan, 𝐬𝐻 said, knocking on Toga's door. It's time to go. Toga opened the door, revealing her dorm room to have a very extensive knife collection and an assortment of anime posters. Yay, she squealed. I can't wait to see 𝗵𝗲𝗺 again. Me neither, 𝐬𝐻 said. Anyways, let's head out. Thank God Orinko's cookies, 𝐬𝐻 thought as he took a cookie and bit down on the chocolatey bit of heaven. Stain and Spinner were bickering about whose blades were better. Mr. Compress, Gentle, and 𝗵𝗲𝗏 were comparing the statistics of their shows. 𝗵𝗲𝗺, Toga, and Twice were bickering about God knows what with poor Mustard and Magni caught in between 𝗵𝗲𝗺 and Twice. And Inko and Nana were making girls talk. Alright guys, I requested a hero to join us today, 𝐬𝐻 said, causing silence to spread across the room. Basically, I need to get the approval of the association to keep this program running, so they asked someone to come in. Fortunately, I got to pick who to bring in, so you don't have to worry about someone snooping around. Ooh, who is it? Toga asked, excited. She was always excited to make new friends, no matter whether they were a hero or villain. Himiko-chan, Midnight burst through the door. Toga stiffened as she saw the lady she had attacked appear right before her eyes. Midnight, sensei, Toga managed, her voice starting to shake. Midnight walked over and knelt down by the girl, locking eyes with her student. Himiko-chan. It's okay, she said, smiling. You don't have to be sorry. We all make mistakes, so please don't be too hard on yourself. We will work past this, okay? Thank you, Toga said as Midnight put a hand on her head. At least there are some heroes who don't treat us like trash, 𝗵𝗲𝗺 muttered, scoffing and looking away. My, aren't you the cutie? Midnight's attention completely diverted to 𝗵𝗲𝗺. She stood up and walked over to him, her hips swaying seductively. May I get a name? Tilda, or can I just call you mine? Tilda, oh Lord, not again, 𝗵𝗲𝗺 muttered under his breath. K-chan, 𝐬𝐻 said after clearing his throat. You are here for a reason, and that reason is not to flirt with my subordinate. Yeah, whatever, Midnight said before handing 𝗵𝗲𝗺 a piece of paper. Call me handsome Tilda, whatever, 𝗵𝗵𝗺 scoffed as he pocketed the paper, not caring to pay attention to the pro-hero as she walked to her seat. Anyways, I'd like to welcome Gentle and 𝗵𝗲𝗏 to the group, 𝐬𝐻 said. I'm sure all of you have met them at one point, but this is their first meeting. Greetings, Gentle said, sipping a cup of tea that Nana had prepared. It is an honor to be here. I'm so happy to be here, 𝗵𝗏𝗏 chirped. It's so nice to see someone is helping my Denjiro-kun. Well, shall we start with the updates? 𝐬𝐻 asked. Well, the bar has been pretty lively, 𝗵𝗵𝗺 said. What bar do you work at, if I may ask? Midnight asked, leaning forward and smiling. Wouldn't you like to know? 𝗵𝗵𝗺 scoffed. Anyways, I've been doing pretty alright. I'm going to ask 𝐸𝐴N on a date, Toga chirped. That's great, 𝐬𝐻 exclaimed. Where are you going to take her? We're going to go cut up some bad people, Toga said, her enthusiasm not wavering in the bit. I'm not sure she would like that, 𝐬𝐻 said. Maybe you should take her to the Candy Palace in Naruhata. I heard it's great for dates. Really? Toga looked confused. But cutting bad people is so much fun. Not everyone thinks cutting bad people is fun, 𝐬𝐻 said, his dad mode turning on. But lots of people like sweets. Okay, Toga chirped. Maybe I can help you find something to wear, Midnight offered. We can't have you not looking the part. Really? Toga asked, still flabbergasted someone she had hurt so badly was willing to help her. Of course, dear, Midnight purred. You're still my student and I still care for you. I'll come too, Magni offered. A first date is really important. Ooh, sounds like fun, Twice chirped. Can I come too? Ooh, I'm not sure if that's a good idea, Spinner muttered under his breath. You'd be surprised, 𝐬𝐬 chuckled. Twice's fashion sense is hot half bad. Well, the forge is doing well, Spinner butted in, desperately trying to change the topic. I'm working on my masterpieces. I'll be able to show them off by next meeting. Masterpieces, 𝐡𝐴𝐻 scoffed. Bet mine are better. What did you say? Spinner roared. He may idolize 𝐡𝐴𝐻, but no one disses Spinner's blades. Anyways, 𝐬𝐬 said. Compressed, gentle. How are your shows going? They are going very well, Gentle said. I must thank you again for offering me a venue. It's nothing, 𝐬𝐬 waved his hand dismissively. It was a hell of a lot of paperwork. But if it meant that Gentle and 𝗷𝗲𝗄 were able to stray down the path of good, it was a small price to pay. I still have higher numbers, Compress said. Only a true showman could have numbers like mine. But soon enough, the world will see how fabulous my acts are, Gentle retorted. Our numbers will pass yours in no time. Nana, 𝐬𝐬 said hastily before the two villains could butt in. How have you been? I've been great, Nana said, a huge smile on her face. Ryuko-chan and Rumi-chan have been very nice to me. I'm really happy that I'm friends with them. That's good, 𝐬𝐬 said. He of course wanted to comfort her about Shigaraki, but now wasn't the time. Inko, are you feeling any better? I'm still worried about Izuku, she said. But I know he's safe in your hands. You don't need to worry about Deku, 𝐡𝐴𝐻 said. He's a strong kid and a true hero. I respect that. Thank you, 𝐡𝐴𝐻-san, Inko smiled warmly at the hero killer. I'm just saying the truth, 𝐡𝐴𝐻 said, scoffing. You don't have to thank me. Twice? 𝐬𝐬 asked, motioning for him to go next. Magni and I recently started a game store, Twice said happily. It's going really well. Yeah, it's really convenient that Twice can be the cavern ruler of every game at the same time, Magni said. I honestly don't understand that game. You should learn, Twice exclaimed. Caverns and Cryptids is a masterpiece. Yeah, whatever you say, Magni said, waving her hand dismissively. Anyways, you all should prepare for the outing, 𝐬𝐬 said. I need to talk to Midnight before we go. So, what do you think? 𝐬𝐬 asked the pro hero. The room was now empty as everyone else went to go prepare for the outing. They don't seem like a bad group of people, Midnight said. I would say they were putting up an act, but they all seemed surprisingly genuine. Yeah, they don't have much of a filter when it comes to each other, 𝐬𝐬 said, shrugging. I'm just happy I can help. Of course you are, Midnight sighed. I just can't wait to get my hands on that 𝗬𝗲𝗄, 𝐬𝐬 shuddered as Midnight licked her lips. This was definitely going to be a long day. Hawks was sitting on top of a building, enjoying his dinner. Fukuoka was particularly calm that day, which was weird considering there was a lot of crime yesterday. The newly appointed number 2 hero wasn't really complaining, though. Ah, Hawks, a voice said, almost making the man jump. Hawks turned around to see the only person who trumped him in rankings, Black Lightning. The man sat down next to Hawks and took out a bag of homemade cookies. Talking some time to chill too? Hawks asked, taking a bite out of his sandwich. You're not usually based here. Well, my squad needed to go stretch their legs, and I thought I would take some time to meet the new number 2, 𝐬𝐬 said, opening the bag and munching on one of the cookies. Well, it's nice to meet ya, Hawks said. Thanks for taking care of the city. I really wanted some time to kick my feet up. Don't mention it, 𝐬𝐬 said, smiling. We all need a break every now and again. You're preaching to the choir, my man, Hawks replied lazily. Being a top-ranked hero is such a drag. I know, right? 𝐬𝐬 chuckled dryly. I would love a world where I could have a little bit more time to kill. Yeah, Hawks smiled. 𝐬𝐬 seemed to get it. That would be great. Aachen. Ochako was just shopping at the mall like a normal person when an all-too-familiar person tackled her in a hug. Himi-chan, Ochako exclaimed, squirming free from the girl's grip and standing up. What are you doing here? Oh, Kuroniai said I can go look for you instead of going on today's outing, Toga chirped, overly excited. Isn't that exciting? Why, yeah, Ochako smiled, still a little flustered from what had just transpired. Why did you want to look for me? Well, I wanted to ask you on a date, of course, Toga said nonchalantly. A date? Ochako yelled. Where did you get that idea? Well, I like you, Toga said simply. Don't you go on dates with people you like? Why, you can't just say that so simply. Ochako turned her head and covered her face, which was tomato red at that point. Why not? I like you? It's as simple as that, Toga said innocently, tilting her head and touching her cheek with her index finger as a sign of confusion. Is there something wrong with that? And no, 𝐻𝐚𝐭 parted her index and middle finger to look at the girl. It's just so sudden. I didn't expect you to be so upfront with it. Why not? Toga again asked innocently. And never mind, 𝐻𝐚𝐭 muttered, forcing herself to look up at the girl. So do you want to go on a date? Toga asked again, never getting an answer to her original question. Yes, 𝐻𝐚𝐭 said, not even thinking. I would love to go on a date with you, 𝐬𝐬-chan. The next day, Talia walked into the bar, sighing. It's not that he didn't enjoy his work, but sometimes things got monotonous. Hey, boss, Talia said as he put on his uniform. Sup, boss man said. Thank you for taking the extra shift. It's getting kind of crowded in here. I can see that, 𝗏 said as he went up to the counter. He started taking orders, his mind wandering as he did so. Making the drinks has become practically second nature to him, so he allowed his mind to wander as he worked. Man, Talia thought to himself, as he served some random person a martini. I hope something interesting could happen today. Oh my tilde Talia looked up when he heard a familiar voice. A voice that he had only familiarized himself with the day before. Is that 𝗵𝗃? Tilde, what a surprise! Tilde Talia's face paled as he saw Lady Midnight in her civilian clothing with a slight flush on her face. The man inwardly prayed that the woman didn't go bar hopping until she found the bar that he was in. He also questioned how the lady had found him. But there were more pressing matters at the moment. His life, and more importantly, his chastity was in danger. Shit Oken, Achin. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 could hear the banging on the door all the way from her room. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 got up, looking down to check if her pajamas were decent, as she was not getting changed to appease Toga's antics. She trudged along towards the door, noting how empty the apartment felt with her parents on a business trip. She eventually makes it to the door, slowly opening it by a crack, revealing Toga, wearing a pretty red skirt, her hair tied in pigtails. Yes, 𝐻𝐚𝐭 mumbled. If she wasn't so tired, she probably would have blushed and stammered. Akin, did you forget about our date? Toga whined, looking dejected. D-date? Like magic. The word caused 𝐻𝐚𝐭 to stir. I thought that was supposed to be tomorrow. It's Sunday, Toga deadpanned uncharacteristically. Ack. 𝐻𝐚𝐭's face flared up. She could have sworn that it was Saturday, but due to her tendency to stay up all night studying and training her quirk, sometimes the days blended together. She slammed the door, barely able to manage out. I'm sorry, I'll be right out. A couple minutes later, 𝐻𝐚𝐭 opened the door, dressed in a pink skirt, deciding to wear a sunflower hairpin her mother gave her for her 10th birthday. I'm so sorry. I was up all night. It's okay, Akin. Toga hastily cut in before 𝐻𝐚𝐭 could start rambling. Her lips parted into a warm smile. I'm just happy that we can spend some time together. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 sputtered a little bit as Toga grabbed her hand. 𝐬𝐬-chan. Come on, Toga chirped, pulling her classmate along, a genuine laugh escaping her. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 smiled softly, her drowsiness long forgotten. Perhaps today wouldn't be that bad. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 and Toga exited the train to Narahata. Toga had decided to go here because there was a huge candy shop that has been steadily finding its way in headlines for the past few years. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 had gone once with her parents to celebrate graduating primary school, but she doesn't really remember it all too well. Ni, Akin, Toga said, tightening the grip she had on 𝐻𝐚𝐭's hand. I'm so excited. I've never been here before. Well, I have, but... Hey, I'm here this time. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 smiled at Toga. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 didn't know what happened, but Toga seemed troubled. What happened doesn't matter. What matters is that 𝐻𝐚𝐭 was there to make her friend happy. Toga looked up at her, the girl's frown slowly fading away. Thanks, Akin. Toga pulled her friend into a hug, causing 𝐻𝐚𝐭's face to redden. It really means a lot to me. And no problem. 𝐻𝐚𝐭 looked up, meeting Toga's eyes. Her face was still in the color of the tomato, but her lips were curved into a large, genuine smile. I'm happy to be there for you. Eventually, the two arrived at the huge castle known as the Pop Castle, now the most popular candy store in Japan. Hey, 𝐬𝐬-chan, 𝐻𝐚𝐭 said, looking around. The place doesn't seem too crowded today. You're right, Toga replied, looking around. There were about 15 people hanging around the entrance. Sure, they haven't entered, but all the pictures had hundreds of people bustling about the entrance. She pulled out her phone, letting out an audible groan. 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 was cut off when Toga shoved the phone in her friend's face. 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 read the top headline of Hero News. New number 1 announces new sidekick. Burning cold hero, 𝗬𝗲𝗿. Of course it would be those two. 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭's palm promptly connected with her face after reading the headline. 2 days ago. Wouldn't it be a shame if Pop Castle was too crowded for your date on Sunday? Kiro said as he nudged 𝐻𝐡𝐭, offering a wink. Yeah, 𝗬𝗲𝗍 smirked, shooting a glance at Toga, who was busy bothering Shoto. It wouldn't be as if a high-ranking hero would hold a live conference announcing a sidekick for the first time. Ooh, that would be nice. 𝐻𝐡𝐭 was still wrapping her head around the fact that she was going on a date with Toga at all to catch the meaning of what the two pros were saying. She chuckled nervously as she hastily looked for a way to excuse herself. Present day. I don't see how that will work. Toga placed her index finger on her chin and tilted her head, making a confused frown. Never mind. 𝐻𝐡𝐭 grabbed Toga's hand and pulled her into the store. Welcome. An adult woman with pink hair and the standard uniform. A pink tee that had the words Pop Castle, with a star in between the words in black jeans, smiled at the two girls as soon as they crossed the threshold into the gigantic castle of sweets. Hello, Toga chirped as she dashed up to the girl, whose name tag read, Kazuho Hanyama, her face positively beaming. I'm Himiko Toga. Hello, Toga-san, Hanyama said. The customer service smile plastered on her face. Is that girl over there your girlfriend? We do offer couples packages at this time of year. GGG girlfriend. 𝐻𝐡𝐭 all but shouted, her face beat red. We are absolutely yup, she replied, popping the P, causing 𝐻𝐡𝐭 to sputter and trip over her words. Can you show us around, please? Hanyama's smile morphed from a classic customer service smile to a more genuine smile as she witnessed her antics. She then suppressed a sigh as she was exposed to Toga's secret second quirk, puppy eyes. There was no way she could endure such a powerful technique. Though her younger self might have, the purity in the teen's eyes was something that didn't come often in these parts. Of course, follow me. I will show you around the castle. So, what do you want to be when you grow up? The three were about an hour into their tour. Hanyama realized that she got along well with the two girls, bringing out a liveliness in her that she had thought was lost long ago. We going to be heroes, Toga squealed. While Toga may have been oblivious to the hint of grief in Hanyama's eyes, but 𝐻𝐡𝐭 caught it. It was a lot similar to the hint of grief that she would see in Kiro as he looks at the students. Ah, I remember when I wanted to be a hero, Hanyama said, a wistful expression on her face before turning serious. My friend and I tried to play hero a long time ago. If I had any advice for you, you should stop now. Why? 𝐻𝐡𝐭 decided to butt in. It didn't take a detective to know what happened to her friend. Hanyama stopped and looked at the couple with pained eyes. It's okay, 𝐻𝐡𝐭 moved before she thought, placing her hands on Hanyama's. We'll be okay. I'll make sure of that. Me too, Toga chirped, placing her hands with 𝐻𝐡𝐭's. We're too awesome to get hurt. Hanyama looked at the two, studying them. She saw the resolve in their eyes and the calluses in their hands spoke of unspoken experience. For some reason, Hanyama felt inclined to believe the two girls. Of course, she felt that way about 𝐬𝐻𝐻. Although she knew how well that turned out, she knew that there was nothing she could do about it. That feeling aside, she had a feeling those two would succeed. All right, Hanyama sighed and shook her head before honing her eyes at the two girls, eyes full of hope. But promise that you won't do anything stupid. Yeah, the two girls chirped happily before looking at each other, a wide grin on both of their faces. It's certain, Hanyama thought to herself as she turned around and beckoned the couple to follow her. These two are going places. 𝐬𝐻𝐻, please watch over them.